Alright, here we are. Let's look at Wild Blue Yonder's campaign rulebook. I'm going to try to learn the campaigns. I've read through it. I don't feel very comfortable, to be honest. But some of it is because it has been forever since I played a campaign of this. And I think I only played one ever. So these rules have changed a little bit. One correction. I think I got the guy's name wrong who used to run the convention games. It's Mike Lamb, and it's kind of nice they dedicated the game to him, actually, this version, if I recall correctly, which is real sweet. And, you know, obviously he also has playtesting credits and whatnot, but yeah, he did a lot for evangelizing this the Down in Flames series. He really liked it, and you know, ran a wonderful experience for a lot of people. I didn't play too heavily, like I was never in the competition or anything, but it was great to be able to just go sit in on a dogfight or two and then get out. Didn't run campaigns, just ran the dogfights. The one thing, I think he had something where he allowed players to become aces and maybe get the improved pilots. I don't remember if this was in the original game, but in this version, there's no experience system, which I find very disturbing, to tell you the truth. I may try to add one in. Probably not the first time I play a campaign, though. All right. So, let's take a look at what we have here. So a campaign is going to be divided into 3 segments. And this has changed from the old rules, not that I'd remember, but there's basically a series of target-bound turns where you're flying into the target, and you can be intercepted, well, depending on the way you run the campaign. But in the most advanced rules, you can be intercepted in flight, and that, you know, you have to track fuel and whatnot, if that's the case. And I hope to get to that. I don't know if I'll be ready right away. Then you have a single over target turn. You used to have an ingress and egress turn for the target area, and that's when area flak took place. But that's not the case anymore. And during the over target turn, whatever you're doing, if you're dropping a bomb load, you know, if you're trying to recon, whatever you're trying to do with your planes, it happens during that turn. And then there's a series of homebound turns, which is probably shorter than the target-bound turns for most of the campaign situations. This turn sequence is a little different. It's got some additional steps in it. Take a quick look. Search step on night turns to be able to find the enemy. Jettison step, you're able to get rid of your load. You can drop your drop tanks for fuel, stuff like that. Then you go to kind of the normal, the wingman step, where they get to take their fire. The air altitude step, where you get to change altitude. Then we hit something that's special for this. If you're on the over target turn, you handle the airstrikes here, including strafing and whatnot. Then the leader gets to play his cards, just like in the normal leader step. You discard and draw, which works the same. And then the final step, which is the same as it existed in the original game, right? But you've got voluntary disengagement there. In the last target-bound turn, you determine whether or not you're going to break off with fighters or continue over the target. Now, those fighters could conceivably strafe a target if it's eligible to be strafed. Some of them may be bombers as well, may have bombs on them as well. All aircraft that are going over the target take area flak from that. And then in the over the target turn, this happens on the last target-bound turn. Just before you fly over, you make that decision. On the over-the-target turn, every surviving formation aircraft strikes the mission target. Well, that sounds like the airstrike step. And that bothers me. And I found this elsewhere where it was confusing me. It looks like it's inserted here, and then it looks like it's here. Every surviving formation aircraft strikes the mission target, I guess back here, and is subject to target flak, which is here. Remove any over target markers, determine results for each surviving reconnaissance mission aircraft. If using aerial rockets, remove all no support markers placed this turn. If using fuel expenditure, the last action of every turn, including homebound turns, is to record fuel points expended, and if you end with 0 fuel, you'll be doing a fuel disengagement, which could get you home anyway, but it's risky. It's a disengagement. Disengagements are always a risky thing unless you make it to the end of the campaign for whatever reason. That has actually, that's changed. That was in the dogfight. That they're always risky. I think if you break off with fuel, as long as you're not the strike aircraft, you're allowed to get home safely. But if you run out of fuel, if you break off after you ran out of fuel, and you must when you run out of fuel, you have to roll for the disengagement. So, like, fighters can find a base somewhere or something. I don't know. I don't know what it's all supposed to represent. You know, the whole campaign system, and honestly, the whole game is rather abstract in a lot of ways. So, you know, all right. There's 4 different types of campaigns in the game. A land campaign. This is what was originally showing up in Rise of the Luftwaffe. I don't remember that. Might have been the 8th Air Force stuff, but I don't think so. I thought that had, I don't know. They have a fixed number of randomly determined historical missions in which players select resources and assign mission aircraft. And they say the results of the mission don't affect later missions. Well, yes and no. The resources that you pick do. Progressive campaign players assign aircraft in missions from a pool and fly missions until one side or the other wins. Aircraft lost in earlier missions are not available for later missions, but you do get reinforcements and whatnot, so it's not just like, oh yeah, this pool of planes and it's all gone. But it kind of is. You're trying to basically move a marker up and down a track on the campaign sheets. Yeah, I'll show you when we look at them specifically, but each win, you know, gets the marker in your direction. Each loss gets it in the other person's direction, and there might be additional effects to successes and failures that are going to impact your options as you go on. Operations represent one or a few days using unique resourcing mechanisms and may count as one mission in a land campaign. So instead of like a bombing mission, you might have an operation which will require multiple dogfight, you know, multiple flights to happen. But they all generate 1 point thing. And then there's a solitaire campaign, which I didn't even bother looking at. Basically, there's a V1 rocket, I think, and it's coming in, and you've got to try to shoot it down. And it looks totally, you know, it's totally different from the rest of the game. So it's like, don't generally play solo games, and I just play games solo. Leaders and wingmen. Okay. Fighters and light bombers work more or less as we saw in the original, in the dogfight game, minus the bombing aspects. Altitude can affect whether you can bomb, how well you bomb, and also any flak that you take. And then positioning. Light bombers work the same as fighters in terms of positioning, but there's no positioning with respect to medium and heavy bombers, which will be generally flying in formation. If they're broken from their formation, you can pick on them, and they get like a mini hand for their turret. that'll protect them. Okay. Let's take a look at the sequence of play. I guess we'll look at the specifics. All right, in the search step, you draw cards equal to your fighter's knight combat rating. Unless one or more of these cards are blue bordered, white bordered instead if you're not a knight fighter. And we can look. The blue bordered are the reaction cards. The white border are these kind of dual use cards. And the red border are just attacks. And I'm guessing there's more blue bordered cards than white bordered cards. Skip all remaining steps in this turn except the airstrike and draw steps or voluntary disengagement. So basically, if in night turns or in night situations, engagements, whatever, you may not see the enemy at all and not be able to do anything about them. And that might be really bad if somebody is behind you. So I don't know. Like if somebody's tailing you, it feels like you should be able to do something about that, regardless of whether, you don't have to search for them, but whatever. That's what it looks like you cannot. You can voluntarily jettison a load by removing the marker for that load. All aircraft of a single unit have to jettison if any does. So a unit is either a fighter wingman pair, something else which is a section, which works kind of like a fighter wingman pair but has like an extra plane in it and gets a slight advantage for that extra plane. But it is extra losses you can take. Or a formation, or a lone plane. Okay, the wingman step seems to work the same as anything else, except during the over target turn, if that element, fighter wingman pair, is going to strike the target, there is no wingman step. He'll be doing strikes instead during the strike step. Altitude looks the same as normal. Airstrike step. If your fighter or light bombers are carrying bombs, air-to-ground rockets, or torpedoes, they strike the mission target with their ordnance. Fighters or light bombers at very low altitude can also strafe, whether they expend ordnance or not. In either case, you must give up your position if you're advantaged or tailing, and become neutral. I don't think you can do this if you're being tailed, but I'm not positive. Whether it struck the target or not, your unit is now attacked by target flak, the wingman first, unless it broke off. Now this is interesting. Final step. So that's the difference. So planes during their turns do the airstrike. Elements during their turn do the airstrike step. Formations do it in the final step, after all of the fighter and light bomber elements have gone. Leader's step. If you haven't struck the mission target this turn, you can choose and announce an enemy aircraft and play cards one at a time from your leader's hands. These can allow you to adjust your altitude, change your position, everything's pretty normal. Instead of playing cards though, you can voluntarily disengage this time unless you're over the target. Discard, same as before. Draw step, you can draw for your leader's hand. Again, same rules as before. Final step. If you're on target bound, any of your formation aircraft may voluntarily disengage, and that gets them out of the fight and home safe. No problems. On the last target-bound turn, fighters determine whether they'll break off or continue over target. Then all aircraft going over the target suffer area flak. In the over-target turn, every surviving formation aircraft strikes the mission target and is subject to target flak. They then attack every aircraft over target with area flak, then attack every area over target with area flak. Remove any over-target markers. Determine results for each surviving reconnaissance mission aircraft. I think I kind of read this before. Aerial rockets, same thing as before that I read. Fuel expenditure, yeah. We read this on the back and went into what little detail we could. Okay, we got new planes. Fighters work the same as before, but some of them can carry load and can do some bombing action. And they're essentially the same thing as light bombers. The two cannot be really distinguished. Well, we'll see, because there's something here. Night fighters are usually present only during night missions. Night fighter aircraft cards have a dark blue background and a night combat rating, which, I don't know. I just saw one. They do not have a wingman. So here's one. And the night combat ratings here above the performance on this one. I don't know if it always is. It's this little green thing. What did we say here? During night missions, there are no night fighter wingmen. I don't know if they're a regular fighter wingman. Light bombers normally fly in leader and wingman elements and are treated the same as fighters in all respects, except some of them are capable of dive bombing and or torpedo strikes in addition to level bombing. That'll be on the card. Escorting fighters may attempt to protect accompanying light bombers when they're attacked. Yeah. So you're going to have a chance to intervene if somebody tries to select a light bomber, or a formation for that matter, as a target. Light bombers cannot attack enemy fighters that are not carrying ordnance unless they begin their turn engaged with those unloaded enemy fighters. So, if somebody's tailing you or advantaged on you, or you're already tailing or advantage them, you can play on them, but once you become unengaged, you can't bring them in as a new attack. Light bomber wingmen draw cards equal to their offensive rating +1 when attacking formation aircraft without intervention, instead of plus their defensive rating. They're going to be a little worse at picking off formations, but I don't think it's very likely. I guess you could be using light bombers as your fighters. It seems like a really bad idea, but maybe your resources are such that you're forced to try to defend with light bombers or something. Score more victory points for damaging or destroying a light bomber, 3 and 6, than for a fighter. Fighters were 2 and 5. Excuse me. When determining campaign victory points, the controlling player scores 3 victory points for each light bomber that goes over target and completes the mission undamaged. Even if they don't succeed in hitting anything or whatever, they tried, and that counts for something. But they have to have their load with them and whatnot to do this. Okay, formation aircraft. Light bombers. Okay, the primary difference between bomber classes is how they operate when under attack by enemy fighters. Now we have light bombers here for some reason. I don't think they're generally in formation. They can attempt to turn, climb, and dive to maneuver out of perilous situations. They perform much the same as fighters do, though not as well. Okay. That's pretty much what we knew here. Medium and heavy bombers, though, fly in rigid formations, relying on mutual supporting fire to repel enemy attacks. These two classes are formation aircraft. Now, recall, they had turret defense and turret support on them, which we'll take a look at, I guess. I'm going to try to grab one of these. There's a medium bomber here. So it's got a turret defense of 1 star and a turret support of 0. That means it's not going to be supporting other planes in its formation. There is still an advantage. I don't know. There's something. The rules bother me, and I looked in the errata because they bothered me so much. I generally don't look in errata, and the errata didn't address it. So I don't know, man. Okay, we'll get to that in a bit. Instead of performance and horsepower ratings, formation aircraft have speed ratings. These often determine the mission's duration. Instead of burst and gunner, they have turret defense and turret support. Instead of leader or wingman elements, medium and heavy bombers normally fly in formation. A medium bomber formation is 2 aircraft, while a heavy bomber formation can be up to 3 aircraft. Aircraft of one formation may not combine with another formation during a mission. And I think they're of the same type. But only bombers of the same type can fly in the same formation, but different models of that type, i.e. with a letter and number beyond them. So this is the Junkers 52 3M. That 3M could be something else, as long as it's a Junkers 52. Do we have different kinds? We got a lot of these. Damn. Yeah, I don't think there's another type. But okay. There might be, you know, in other products. Notably my fighters and bombers pack, which I need to cut apart. There was some explanation. So first of all, they switched to the 2-deck situation, which added a lot of cards to the game, obviously. And they put a lot of different planes in. So they took out things like the poles. How big a deal is that? I don't know. kind of bums me out, because that was sort of the first fight I would always do, is a crappy Russian, what do we have here? That's Italian. One of these pieces of shit up against the Polish plane. It was a good match, and they both were really shitty, and it was kind of funny to do. Not as funny as what I did, though. So they were better matched. Where are we? All formation aircraft of the same type in a mission must fly at the same altitude as specified in the mission instructions on the campaign card. I'll get to the campaign cards in a moment. Well, why don't I hit pause and do so? We know we're going to be putting this together. It's just, I have a bunch of Central Front series in front of this, so I got to find the break point when I load this up. In addition to there being bombers available, and you know, some of these other counters that we weren't using before, like bombs and crews and whatnot, we have these 4 different types of cards. The campaign log is basically a place that tells you what kind of planes you have for each turn of a campaign available to you. And it gives you recording space. And these are different. This is an exceedingly complex campaign. This is the land campaign, much easier. Doesn't tell you the planes for the land campaign. That'll be described. Jeez. Oh, I'm missing something. That's actually filled out, I think, in here through the aircraft selection table. Special missions listed here for some of the land campaigns. And then, I don't know, this is information on the that's necessary for play of this, and it's much more complicated than, you know, just the air flight game. But anyway, you fill out what resources you're using and what attacks they're doing, what missions they're taking, etc., by using these logs. There are duplicates of the logs, like there are quite a few of each one. It's as if they were regular pieces of paper, but this is decent stock. And it's also got a glossiness on it. Again, I'm wondering if I can use China markers on it. I wouldn't want to use the erasable pen markers, which are easier to like operate with. But worst comes to worst, I can photocopy them or put them in a plastic sleeve or something like that. Although those sleeves are not good. My old SFB ones are a problem. You have the actual mission itself, which is a fairly complex set of different things that tells you what each plane does, what it's, you know, what's capable of, and these are back printed. These are also back printed, so you've got, you know, one of each side of this. This is keeps track of how many, you know, the turn records that are going, and then it's got some other information that would be useful, you know, for the strikes, for example, or the victory points you're going to get. But these are your target cards. And basically they tell you what the flak level is, how much damage you do via various cards, and how many points you get based on the damage that you do in that particular mission. And we got the dogfight here as well, which is your normal mission. You might end up in just a dogfight. Some of the missions will just be dogfights, and basically both sides will just throw some fighters into that. Okay. Oh, what do we got here? Okay, formation aircraft don't have position rules. They're never engaged. You never are tailing or advantaged on them. Actually, the attacker gets to pick their angle of attack, which has effects. Most formation aircraft employ saturation bombing. Some medium bombers, though, can level or torpedo bomb. Formation aircraft never initiate combat with other aircraft. And unlike a fighter, though, they can score hits on enemy aircraft when responding to an attack. Basically, those turrets are able to get hits on the enemy plane. You're not able to maneuver the enemy plane. There's two things that you can do, and they are going to be... Oh, I don't remember. One is if it's an in my sights out of the sun card. Those do damage as if they're that card. And then there's this marker, which is spoiled attack, which means you get to cancel out one of the attacking plane's cards. Their best card, actually, that they shoot at you. So these heavier bombers are going to have a fair amount of firepower that prevents stuff. Now, if we look at something like this, though, it only has a 1-point turret defense. So it's going to get one response card, one chance to spoil an attack and to get a hit on the enemy. And it could do both. Unlike fighters, bombers need not lose their bombs when they're damaged. However, the bomb rating of a bomber is usually reduced when it's on its damaged side. And you'd see that. Oh, there's a medium bomber without a bomb. Oh, there it is. So it's got a 1-point saturation bomb capability, or cargo equal to 5. And on the other side, it's got a 0-point saturation bomb, or cargo equal to 4 once it's damaged. I guess some guys, if you're carrying paratroopers or whatever, some of them fall out. Well, they die, you know. They get shot up by the damage. Okay. They say the inaccuracy is due to bombing from a damaged plane rather than actually losing the bombs. Like if a bomb got hit, chances are it would explode, isn't it? I don't know. Damaged formation aircraft fall out of formation and can no longer contribute or receive turret support. A bomber leaves the formation the instant it's flipped to its damaged side or suffers a cockpit hit. To show this, you move the stricken bomber away from the other aircraft cards. It's now out of formation at the same altitude. Multiple out-of-formation bombers can't combine, can't join another formation or anything. They're just loose at that point. The airdrop and air transport missions require the striking side to use its bombers as transports, which is the cargo rating there. These will determine victory points instead of ordnance. You might either be dropping cargo, either paratroopers or supplies, or you might be landing at a base, depending on the mission. Do we have the Berlin airlift here? No. A little early for that. Aircraft that have dive brakes starting the over-target turn at low altitude can strike military or naval targets only. Okay. They specify the type of target. Like this is an industrial target. This is a logistical target. This is a military target. Okay. They strike military or naval targets as if they are dive bombing at very low altitude instead of using saturation bombing. If they do so, they use the dive bombing column of the strike chart with their saturation bomb rating, and any target flak cards with special spoiled attack symbols drawn against them count as spoiled attacks. There's two types of spoiled attack symbol. I may have shown you the wrong kind. I think this is the normal one. Anyway. Oblique guns. At night, you can choose to attack formation aircraft with oblique guns instead of with your normal hand. Upon declaring this, set your hand aside and draw a separate mini hand equal to your night fighter's oblique guns number. I don't know about that. And attack as if with a wingman, with no burst limit. Reduce the target's turret defense rating by 1. We found ourselves a night fighter. See if I don't remember it having that. There aren't a lot of night fighters. Let me see if I can find one. Okay, so here's the deal. I've got this. This is a Dornier. This is not the one I want. I've got this HE219A2. I do not see an oblique gun rating anywhere. Now again, we didn't have a distinguishment of what is present on a night fighter. Let's see the example. A 219A-2 leader, that's what I've got here. It can only be a leader. Is attacking a Lancaster with oblique guns. You draw 4 cards. Why? I don't know. I've got a. So here's the numbers I have on here, right? I've got a 3 night fighter rating. That is not the oblique guns as far as I know. I've got a 6 performance at 2 horsepower. Those are not it. I've got this 2 burst with a little +1 in a square. Which, I don't know. You draw 4 cards. The allied player only draw 1 from the mini hand instead of its normal 2. I do not see where the oblique guns number is on this. I just don't see it. I've had this issue before. There it is. Multi-engine oblique guns 4. Okay. So now we know where to find it. Great. All right. So it'll have a mini hand that you're allowed to attack with as if you're a wingman with no burst limit. Since you're firing on a formation, you're not trying to get any kind of, well, okay. When you're firing at a formation, you operate kind of like a wingman normally, trying to get, yeah, let me leave that alone. We'll get to where it is. You operate kind of like a wingman, trying to get position so that, well, not kind of like when you're firing at a wingman, trying to get position on it so that you can get more bursts out of your hand. But if you use the oblique guns, you get to draw a handful, a mini hand of cards. 4 cards, that's pretty many. I don't know what that had. That had like a 6 power or whatever. So your normal hand would be 6. You get a free 4 card hand from this, and you don't have any burst limits. But you don't know whether or not you have shots when you're drawing from those. That's the thing with wingmen. When a wingman attacks, you don't know whether it can do shit, right? It could be incredibly powerful. It's very random. The oblique guns works kind of that same way, where it's going to be very random what you get out of it. When determining mission duration in a campaign, use the slow number of these fighters or light bombers instead of their default value of 6. I'm assuming that slow number is going to be in the same place as the oblique guns is. I don't know. And indeed it is. We got one right there, a light bomber with a slow 5. Okay. And that makes them take more turns to get to target. Sections. Okay. Early on in World War II, the fighter wingman paradigm was not absolute. And in some cases, elements will start with a section marker on its wingman, representing a 3rd aircraft. when this is present, the wingman's offensive rating goes up by 1 when attacking. When attacking a formation aircraft, unless the section wingman is green, you decrease the wingman's defensive rating by 1 when attacked by a fighter, because there's more target out there with that extra plane. If the wingman is shot down, you remove the section marker, the pilot marker under it, if any, and all hit markers from the wingman. Instead of removing the wingman card itself. I don't know if you would actually remove the pilot marker under it. I think the pilot marker under it would be on that third sectioned plane, and it feels like that's wrong. If the wingman has a pilot, he'd die. But maybe I'm wrong there. Yeah, I don't think so. If the leader is shot down, you remove the section marker and retain any hit markers on the wingman. The newly promoted leader is unscathed and inherits all other markers. Basically what happens is you still have 2 plane elements. Now you have a leader, wingman, normal formation type situation that you're dealing with. And whichever plane got shot down is the one that got shot down. And the third plane, the section plane, is not available to be shot down, is my understanding of how this should work. I'm not sure that that's... I get the feeling that this, if the wingman is shot down, remove the section marker, the pilot marker under it, if any, and all hit markers. So, from the wingman, instead of removing the wingman card itself. To me, what that means is your wingman would keep his good pilot rating, even though he was reacting and is the one that got shot down. And that feels wrong, right? But maybe, maybe the idea is that the section plane is the one that got shot out of the air, and the wingman, if he's still a decent pilot, is still there. That may be the intention here. Yeah, because then if you have a green section pilot, he's the one who gets shot down. Sure, I buy it. I buy it. So if your wingman gets shot down, it's actually that third plane that got shot down, and your wingman didn't take any hits whatsoever. The section can't be targeted or anything like that. Loaded aircraft. Aircraft can be equipped with munitions, additional stores called loads. All loads except cargo, drop tanks, and gun pads are ordnance. Each type of load has its own rules and restrictions and common rules for all loads. If you're carrying loads, it's specified in the mission target matrix and the campaign rules, or by the resources that are spelled out, which would be on here probably. And this is really weird. Again, it tells you who is on, you know, who the pilots are. So you actually like get the pilots out of here. I really don't like that. I really kind of want... I don't mind if you start with some good pilots and some green pilots, and certainly not with, you know, don't mind if you have some green pilots. But it kind of feels to me like you should be able to get good pilots through the course of the campaign. Maybe the campaigns just aren't that long, but some of them seem like they really can be in terms of total number of missions. I don't know. Aircraft can carry only one type of load normally, but the appropriate marker on the aircraft card, so like you could put a bomb or a torpedo. What the hell's this? Oh, that's the section markers. This is something else, loose formation. Okay. Both the leader and the wingman of a unit must be equipped with the same type of load. If you choose to voluntarily jettison a load, both aircraft must do so. I think everybody in the formation has to as well. Fighters and light bombers carrying loads are loaded and suffer penalties. When drawing an initial card for a leader carrying an ordnance or cargo, place it face down under the aircraft card without examining it. Until your leader is attacked by an enemy aircraft playing an attack card that is not negated by escort intervention, you cannot look at these cards and must discard a random card if you climb and skip your discard step. Basically, your hand is there to track, altitude losses and whatnot, but you have no capability to plan based on it. Loaded aircraft cannot attack unloaded enemy fighters unless they begin their turn engaged with those enemy fighters or are intervening escorts. Loaded leaders and wingmen cannot play half-loop, scissors, or full-throttle action cards, including during the airstrike step. These cards are marked with a not if loaded symbol in their attack and response section as a reminder. Loaded leaders, let's take a look. Half loop, scissors, or full throttle. We had a scissors here. No, that's what this is. This is the not if loaded. Okay, let's look for the spoiled attack symbol then. This is a spoiled attack. This is the special spoiled attack. The normal spoiled attack is gray. There's one of the normal spoiled attacks. This is a special one. It's not always applicable. And this is the you can't do this if loaded. We're almost out of battery. And we're only 6 pages into a 40-page rule book for the campaigns. Now, to be fair, about half or more of those pages are actually specific rules for specific campaigns. And we're not going to go through all of that. Let's see. Loaded wingmen have their offensive ratings halved. Fighters round up, light bombers round down. Apply this after applying any reduction for very high altitude. What are our offensive ratings? It's a good, interesting question. It is where it says offensive. That's wingman. Okay. Yeah. Gotcha. Loaded wingman. Once an aircraft jettisons or expends its entire load, it no longer suffers these loaded penalties. A fighter must immediately jettison its ordnance if it becomes damaged. It may, but need not, jettison drop tanks at the same time. Voluntary ordnance jettisoning. Award the opposing side 1 victory point for each of your fighters or light bombers that jettisons its ordnance during the jettison step, but not the involuntary. Okay, I'm going to swap batteries out. But basically the idea is if you call off the mission when you're not damaged or anything for a given plane because you want it to be more maneuverable or whatever, you're going to take a victory point penalty for that. Period. The end. You were slated with that plane just supposed to be bombing or whatever you're supposed to do. Probably bombing if it's a fighter. But anyway. All right. Bombs and torpedoes have markers. Aerial rockets have their own markers. When you're attacking formation aircraft, you use the attacking bombers. And then after you declare your attacking formation aircraft, but before drawing or playing cards, declare that you're firing aerial rockets. Oh, this is the aerial rockets. The bombs, you remove them as you use them. This is the aerial rockets. You declare you're attacking. Then, before drawing or playing cards, declare you're firing aerial rockets. Once the target formation is determined, draw 1 action card for each aircraft in the formation and you see what happens to it. And then you remove the marker. You can't shoot guns at the same time you're firing your aerial rockets. The aerial rockets is basically a way to hit the entire formation all at once. You just blast a bunch of shit at it. And, you could get very lucky. You could do nothing. If you get an asterisk on there, that plane cannot lend turret support to other aircraft in the formation for the rest of that current game turn. And I think there's some kind of marker that says that. That's the no support marker. Okay. Couldn't get my pipe to work. Certain aircraft have air-to-ground rockets instead of or in addition to bombs when allowed off the resource charts, which these are locations. I thought resource charts were on here, but that's like a land campaign. See, Battle of Britain is one of the more complicated ones. I don't know. Whatever your resources are, come off a specific list of stuff. Yeah, so for example, here are your resources that you get. But I think the resources for some of these campaigns are contained essentially in this set instead. Where are we? You expend air-to-ground rockets during the airstrike step as if making a strafing run. This rocket strike can be made from very low or low altitude. Regardless of the aircraft's burst rating or altitude, you draw 1 card. 2 if it has a skilled pilot with the strafe skill. Skilled pilots are the guys in the bag. They have letters on them, and those letters are their capabilities. So like an A is an ace, as an example, and they just have an extra ace card at all times until they use it. Like for the duration of each mission, they have an extra ace card, which is just a counter. One of these guys that they get. And that may have been the extent of what Mike Lamb's campaign had, was if you got 5 kills, you got an ace counter. It might not have been that you get to draw a person or something. So I'm a little iffy about the pilots. I've complained enough. Okay. You draw 1 card. The defending player draws 1 less target flak card than he normally would, because the rockets have more of a standoff capability. And if the strafe is a hit, you inflict 2 damage points on the target. And that's it. Drop tanks are carried under the wings or fuselage. They're used in campaign missions to extend the range of fighters. Aircraft automatically expend their fuel points from the drop tanks before they start using their internal fuel. Once their drop tank is empty, they can just disband. You can just drop it. Fighters need not jettison drop tanks when damaged. Once voluntarily jettisoned, however, they lose any extra fuel points that are in those tanks. There doesn't seem to be any danger to carrying the tanks, except that you are loaded. Like, you get the loaded penalties from it. Gun pods. In addition to causing an aircraft to be loaded, gun pod... That's all they do. They just make you loaded. Gun pods reduce a leader's performance rating by 1. Okay, that's even worse. They also reduce a wingman's defense rating by 1, except when attacking a bomber. Apply these penalties whether an aircraft is damaged or undamaged. Now, there's 2 types of gun pod. All of them add +1 to the leader's burst rating, and they add 2 to a wingman's offensive rating only when attacking a formation aircraft. The 30mm gun pods, in addition to the 20mm, they add 1 hit point to every in my sights or out of the sun card successfully played when a pilot, not the gunner, attacks in the wingman or leader step. Remember, some planes have an extra gunner in the back or whatever. Not turrets, a gunner. Fighters will never jettison their gun pods even when damaged. Mines. During mine laying, you're able to drop mines equal to saturation bomb rating or twice your level bombing rating. I want to break for a bit. I'm tired. Oh boy, letting raid play by itself, so let's get to this. Pilots and crews. Okay, so there's 2 ways, there's 2 different things that are used. There's pilots, who are individual guys with letter codes. And we're not going to go over all of the different codes. Like I said, you know, like the ACE one allows you to have an ACE chit. If we take another one here, burst increases the burst rating for something. That's for pilots. But crews also have little letter codes here. And they have a different set. But this says AC Ace Crew. Okay, yeah. Which works a little differently than an Ace over here. So an ace over here gets 1 free ace pilot card during a mission. The ace crew gets 2 ace markers twice during the game. At any time you can declare the response card as a spoiled attack capability. But it's not a full ace. You can't cancel out, stuff. Because those formation, and this is the thing, the crewed aircraft are for formation aircraft. Those formation aircraft don't have the capability to like dodge stuff and prevent attacks. Now the interesting part though, and we'll just skip over what the advantages and what all the advantages are. I'll go over them if I'm using them. These are actually a requirement as far as I know. You receive pilot and crew either by chosen resources or through random selection. Place the pilot or crew on the aircraft card where it'll remain. Now, random selection. After all resources are revealed but before altitudes are chosen, each side determines whether any skilled pilots will be flown. Draw a number of action cards equal to the number of fighters and light bombers flying, excluding those that already have a pilot through resource. Now, some of your pilots are just assigned by, the campaign that you're playing or whatever. Draw for all aircraft of one type before drawing for another. If using only one deck, players can draw in any order desired and may reshuffle after the first side is finished. Obviously, we each have our own deck. Cross-index each card drawn with the proper line on the aircrew selection table on the play aid card. Is that this? I don't know what the play aid card is. There we go. Yeah. So here you would be getting specific historical pilots or whatever. Let's see what you get, though. If the card drawn is listed on that line, randomly select a skilled pilot counter from among those listed. Generic veteran pilots are also always available whether or not that aircraft type has any pilots listed. I don't know where veterans are. Are those on the opposite of green? Yeah. We have the greens there. I don't see veterans as a counter here, but maybe they're just jumbled into these. Yeah. These guys. Oh no, those are American. No. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe some of them don't have a name. I have no fucking clue. If I run out of named pilots for a particular mission, are they on the back of aces? Yeah, they're on the back of aces. Okay. Okay. And here, veterans, at any one time during the game, you may declare that the card you are playing is either a barrel roll or a tight turn. The ace you have to play a card and you replace the card with the ace counter. And the veteran works the same way. It's just not as powerful. The options are just barrel roll and tight turn. Okay. And it's, again, a one-time chit that you use. So I guess that's the generic veterans. Assign each skilled pilot selected to an aircraft. Skilled pilots must be assigned to leader aircraft if possible, then to normal wingmen, then to section aircraft if any last. The number of skilled pilots is not limited to those listed for that campaign. Okay, so why do we have them listed and what's up with this? Yeah. Do we expand the pool? When do we expand it? Do we expand it, when we pull the historical pilots, or do we just throw everybody in a cup and pull one? I don't know. All right. Does not tell us. skilled crew selection procedure. Like, my assumption here was, look up the proper line on the aircraft crew selection. If the card drawn is listed on that line, so like if it's a German fighter, it needs clouds or full throttle, I would get a pilot. But I think you just pull at random. Randomly select a skilled pilot from those listed. But then lower down, the number of skilled pilots is not limited to those listed for the campaign. So I don't know what they're talking about there. I didn't feel like this rule set had as many problems. When we get to the campaign rule set, stuff starts getting a little fuzzier. And I kind of indicated that by like, hey, reading through it, I had some real issues. Yeah, okay. Anyway, this is not terribly exciting though. You just get random pilots. They're not pilots that are assigned to the missions well, to the campaign as a whole, which is very problematic because I would be, say, flying multiple weeks of this thing, like the Stalingrad airlift, and you would think I would keep the same pilots, and if they get shot down, they're dead, and I don't get them anymore. And as pilots start becoming more and more competent, they would go up in value. So, for example, someone who succeeded in flying, say, 2 missions might, well, say someone succeeded in flying a mission, they would lose their green pilot marker if they had it. If they fly 2 more, they would get a veteran. Once they get 5 kills, they would become an ace, which to me would be drawing from there. But you would start with a pool of pilots as well, because you're in the midst of the war. There would be some competent pilots in there. There's nothing like that. This just appears to be each mission, you just find out, do I got some good pilots here? Now, some may be assigned by resources, but again, if they're assigned by resources, they'll be somewhere like here. So, for example, this BF-109F, if you're doing the Barbarossa mission, you do have these guys. And I guess you treat them like real people, and they might die. We haven't gotten to that, though, yet, which is the chosen resources. Those chosen resources, I believe, are not like permanently with your air group, but it kind of looks like they are when I look at this. Like, this is by the full campaign as opposed to anything else, and that's not how I thought it would be. So we'll see how that words out. Maybe there's something better there. Skilled crew selection procedure. Select skilled crews, the same procedure for skilled pilots. The aircraft selection table may include generic bomber crews. There may never be more than 1 skilled crew for an entire formation, which is either 2 or 3 planes. Now, some of these skilled crews, not out of formation, that's not one. Some of these skilled crews actually have names like this Fertile Myrtle 3, which is only for a B-17, whereas this, which comes with an ace crew, is, I guess, just an ace. I'm not sure why some of these have out of formation markers on the other side. I don't know what you're supposed to do with those. I feel like that may be a misprint. Okay. Skilled air crews and victory points. Besides earning victory points for destroying enemy aircraft, you get extra points for shooting down skilled air crews. When an aircraft with a skilled pilot or crew is destroyed, you get an extra 2 points per skill. So for each letter that they have on them. Now, veteran, it doesn't really tell you how you get them. It might be included in here. But there are no veterans listed here. And if we look at this, it talks about veterans. Generic. So if the card drawn is listed on a line, randomly draw from those listed. Generic veteran pilots are also always available, which I would think is the regardless of whether that aircraft has any of the pilots listed, which I would think is what you would do when you run out of a line. But then it says the number of skilled pilots is not limited to those listed for that campaign. Oh, no. No, I don't see. I don't understand at all. Like what they're trying to express there. It feels like, and maybe that's in the errata. But again, I've got these thoughts of like trying to rework the whole air crew thing to start allowing pilots to get better. The problem is, it takes a lot to become an ace. So if that's how you become a good pilot, shooting down 5 aircraft is kind of a big deal. Now, the way Mike Lamb did it, you know, each player actually was assigned planes from different nationalities. And if you were flying the right nationality at that time, you would get like, you know, however many kills you got, you would get marked down. And once you reached your 5 kills, you would become an ace. Whatever that meant under his system. I don't remember if it just gave you an ace counter or if it was, if it gave you one of these skilled pilots. I think it just gave you an ace marker. I don't think I ever made it. But I could see something like that. But, you know, there were so many hundreds of games of this being played all over the place that, like, you know, it wasn't like me playing out a campaign where I might be playing out maybe, you know, maybe 20 missions or something in the course of the campaign. And also, you know, he had it recorded by player and by nationality, which meant that, like, there was an identifier. If I'm flying an FW-190F, why do we say it that way? If I'm flying this Focke-Wulf here, that's just what I'm flying, okay? I mean, there's nothing to indicate who it is who's actually flying it. And why do I have these facing the damaged side up? And I don't know why. Okay. Green aircrew counters. Green aircrews are optional. Various periods during the war, several air services faced a shortage. Players desiring to see this may use them in their campaign. Inclusion of these is optional because using them may make it very frustrating for the controlling players. Yeah, I kind of think they're cool, though. The green pilot and crew counters are generic and may be used with any nationality. But I don't think they show up via the random system. Aircraft with green pilots have the following penalties. Green leaders reduce the burst rating by 1 and cannot benefit from an agile rating. The -1 burst applies even when flying a 0 burst aircraft, so I guess you have to, like, bring it up to a 2 to get a shot. Green wingmen reduce the offensive rating by 1. This reduction is cumulative with the 1 for being at very high altitude and is applied after any halving for being loaded. When striking a mission target, reduce the result of any bomb drawn by 1 level. Direct becomes a hit, for example. Green pilots may play a maximum of 1 response card, either a blue or white card used as response, per wingman or leader step. This makes them very, very weak. If you can recall, you would see like a series of cards being played, and part of the strategy of the game was sometimes, you know, to hold like a pair of scissors. Well, that's not going to work with green pilots. They can do 1, and if that's responded to, they do not get to, you know, do a counter response or anything. Okay. Green crew effects. Bombers with green crews have the following penalties. Reduce turret support by 1 to a minimum of 0. When striking a mission target, reduce the result of any bomb card drawn by 1 level. This is cumulative with the reduction of saturation bombing of naval targets. Green aircraft crew selection. Okay, hold on. Maybe we have it. The air crew selection table has listings for green as well as skilled. Ah, I got you. Okay, and so they only show up in certain scenarios as green. So like during the Blitz, there's the Brits who are, badly weakened. Oh, this is just a continuation of this. I got you. Gotcha. Okay, so this is all the different types of planes, what you could get off of them. Okay, I should study these things more. But differently from that, it is possible that you will see specific pilots being listed on specific campaigns. I'm not sure. I'm not seeing any. Oh, they'd be listed over here. See, these are the aircraft that are available, and they don't appear to have anyone on them. And I'm pretty sure. We got Zemke greater than or equal to 5. That, I don't know what the fuck that's supposed to represent. So I guess, we'll see that when we try to read through how individual campaigns go when we actually log one, because whatever information is contained up here, is dealt with in specific rule sections for each campaign. All right. So green crew aircraft, the same action card draw determines whether a skilled or green air crew is there. Assign green air crews in the same way as skilled ones after first assigning any skilled pilots or crews. However, assign green pilots to section aircraft first, then to normal, wingmen, and lastly to leaders. So you're always going to, have your best pilot in the lead position in any element. Section pilot. Signify assignment to the third section aircraft by placing the pilot counter under the section marker. Well, these pilots have no effect while under the section marker other than to cost victory points if skilled and shot down. They come into play only if the original leader is shot down. So this is different from what was described earlier. This is what I thought it should be, right? Where if there's a pilot under the section and the wing is shot down or whatever, let's find this. Where did we have this? I don't fucking remember it. Like, fuck. There was something. This was one of those fucking things. Sections. Okay, so here it was. When indicated in campaign, the element starts with the section. While this marker is present, you do some stuff. Okay, if the wingman is shot down, remove the section marker, the pilot marker under it, if any, and all hit markers from the wingman instead of removing the wingman card itself. That sounds to me like, oops, the section guy got shot down instead of the wing. And I'm willing to accept that, right? Like, that's perfectly reasonable. He's probably the worst flyer. But then over here, it speaks more to what it made sense to be, which was that the plane that actually got shot is the one that got shot down. Somehow the section plane, that third plane, is absolutely immune, which also feels weird, but and that's why I was willing to accept this. But here, no, what it says is they have no effect. Where was it? These pilots have no effect while under the section markers, other than to cost VPs if skilled and shot down. Which is impossible because you can't hit the section thing. They come into play only if the original leader is shot down. Ah! Okay, so whoever's under the section gets shot down when the wing gets shot down. No, this does work. This does work. It's just such an obnoxious thing that I feel like there needed to be a note. If the wingman is shot down, remove the section marker, the pilot marker, and hit markers from it instead of removing the wingman itself. So the wingman who's doing all this stuff it never gets shot down when there's a section plane. The section plane gets shot down. If the leader is shot down, remove the section marker and retain any hit markers on the wingman. The newly promoted leader is unscathed and inherits all other markers from the wingman except a pilot counter that was under the section marker, which doesn't appear to go anywhere the way this is worded. But I think he gets promoted to the wing. Okay. But boy, oh boy. All right, unknown crews. Instead of placing crew markers face up only on formation aircraft with skilled or green crews, place these markers face down with just a generic bomber silhouette shown. Similarly, place an average crew marker without a formation on the flip side on every other formation aircraft in play. Okay. So the player who owns the planes knows what quality crew they are. The other player doesn't, because the player who owns them rolls up what they get and then ends up putting these suckers on there. And that's why these have out of formation on the other side. They serve as a dummy as well as a dummy crew under those circumstances. I think that's a cool idea. Preventing opposing players from knowing and targeting the bomber based on the crew. Attacking and defending bombers. Unengaged interceptors declare their target as either the leader or wingman of a specific enemy unit or as a formation aircraft at the same altitude. Escorts may attempt to intervene and defend bombers. All right. Your leader attacks formation aircraft with the cards in hand in the same manner as if you would attack a fighter or a light bomber. Your wingman, after declaring your wingman is attacking a formation aircraft, draw a number of cards for your initial hand equal to their offensive rating. You get +1 if you're in section. Remember, that just adds to your ratings for your wing. Once the target bomber is determined, okay, target bomber gets determined in a complicated sequence. Then your wingman will get additional cards equal to either his defensive rating, if he's a fighter, or 1 if he's a light bomber. If using the optional attack angle rule, increase the defensive rating by 1 for a rear attack and decrease it by 1 for a frontal attack. Remember when I said you get to choose your angle of attack. So, you know, yeah, I'm tailing him and I'm shooting, but he's got a tail gunner, so that may not be so good. Okay. Now, who did you target when you attack a formation? You attack fighter bombers and light bombers the same way as a fighter, but each time you declare an attack against a formation aircraft, you must determine which bomber is attacked as follows. And we'll get to the escorts. The escorts can intervene in either case. You declare the intended target bomber, or the formation if you're attacking with aerial rockets, which hit the entire formation at once. You can do this even if you don't have any attack cards in hand in order to lure an enemy leader into intervening. This tactic represents making a feint effort to draw the escort fighters away and make it easier for other interceptors to attack. If using the optional attack angle rule, declare what your attack will be, front, side, or rear. You can attempt to gain bursts and or ensure an attack on the bomber of your choice by playing either a maneuver or half-loop card, and then you ask the enemy if they'll intervene with their escort. Any one unengaged leader at the same altitude can reactively intervene. If your attempt succeeds, you attack the designated bomber. If your attempt fails, you may make additional attempts if you have more maneuver or half-loop cards in your hand. If any subsequent event succeeds, you attack the targeted bomber as above. If all your attempts fail, the escort player designates which target in the formation aircraft at that altitude that you're attacking. Instead of playing a maneuver or half-loop, you can just ask the enemy if they'll intervene. If they don't intervene or if the intervention fails, the escort player still gets to designate which plane you're targeting out of any formation aircraft of their choice at the same altitude. That is the same wording as here. I don't think you're targeting a formation of planes, which might mean that a loose plane gets targeted this way. I'm not sure. The tighter formation is being in formation just means I think that you get the turret support from the other planes in that same formation. Okay. At least that's what I think. If you're attacking with aerial rockets, the procedure is the same, except a formation is chosen as the target rather than an individual bomber. And I guess a plane can force you to target a loose plane, a loose bomber that way. An enemy plane, an escort. When you attack formation aircraft, you declare your attack angle, front, side, or rear. This is optional. Your wingman and leader must use the same angle. If it's frontal, you lose 1 off your burst rating or offensive rating. And you subtract 1 from the target bomber's turret defense rating. From the side is normal. If you're going from the rear, you add 1 to your burst or offensive rating, but you add 2 to the target bomber's turret defense rating. Tailing is not a good idea, I think. Attacking from the side is the safest. Well, no. Attacking from the side is the normal, but you would be allowed to reduce the risk for both planes or increase the risk, but you get a penalty for that because the turrets get +2. Okay. If the declared target is a friendly fighter carrying ordnance or a bomber of any kind, 1 and only 1 unengaged fighter leader escorting the targeted aircraft at the same altitude may attempt to intervene each time such an attack is declared by the neutral interceptor. Now, you get to play multiple maneuver and half-loop cards on a single attack, so only 1 plane gets to deflect that as far as I can tell. If an attacker plays a maneuver or half-loop card in an attempt to gain position or bursts, or to ensure a specific formation aircraft, he then inquires intervention. Your escorting fighter leader may then intervene by playing an appropriate response card, i.e. one that cancels it. The attacker can then respond to your response and so on until you decline to respond and your intervention fails. Or the attacker declines to respond, and either he makes an additional attempt with another maneuver or half-loop in his hand, or your intervention succeeds. If the attacker's last attempt succeeds, the attack is made on a chosen bomber, continuing normally. If a wingman is attacking a formation aircraft, he first draws additional cards equal to his defense rating modified for the attack angle. So, with your lead fighter, interceptor, whatever, you have your handful of cards, and that's what you're working with, just like you would in a dogfight. With the wingman, it's a little different. You draw 1 handful of wing cards, which might give you some idea of how many shots you have, but you can also play half loops and stuff, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, you can also play the maneuvers or half loops to try to determine what your target is going to be. Remember, wingmen don't have bursts. Okay. And then after the target has been determined, you get additional cards which are going to give you a chance to shoot at the bomber that was chosen by that mechanism, by the half-loop maneuver mechanism. If you successfully thwarted the attacker's last attempt, and the attacker targeted a fighter or a light bomber, he remains neutral and can play in my sights or out of the sun up to his burst limit. He hasn't gained any additional burst through the play of cards. If the attacker targeted a formation aircraft, you may redirect the attack to a bomber of your choice at the same altitude. Whether or not you do so, the attacking leader does not gain any bonus bursts for playing the maneuver half loop card, and the bonus burst for attacking formation aircraft is reduced to 1. Okay, so again, what are the two options here? Well, one option is you're attacking fighters or bombers, in which case you just get to shoot them instead of trying to get a positional advantage on them. But you're able to shoot up to your burst limit, which you'd be allowed to do in a dogfight, right? If I'm just flying there and you're just flying there, I can plink you. That's a wingman. I can plink you with my burst rating without having to maneuver to get you into position. I didn't do that ever, but it is an option. Like if you have a 1 burst plane, you can just chuck a burst at somebody and get a plink on them, and might actually might convince them to disgorge a card that you won or whatever. It's better than discarding a card, I guess. I don't know. All right, I got to swap battery. There may be times when redirecting the attack to a different bomber may not be possible because there's only 1 bomber left at play in that altitude. The final result will be that the bomber targeted would still get attacked, but the number of extra bursts will be reduced. Yeah. Preemptive intervention. Instead of playing a maneuver or half-loop card first, the attacker can just ask, "You intervening?" Your escorting fighter leader can then play a maneuver, half-loop, or full throttle in order to intervene. The attacker can respond to this until your intervention succeeds, or you decline to respond and either make an additional attempt with another maneuver, half-loop, or full throttle card from your hand, or your intervention fails. The escorting plane becomes the more active one in this case. If you do successfully intervene, the attack is diverted onto your leader instead of a bomber. The attacker can then play cards against your leader as in a normal attack. Whether he does or not, he can't attack any other aircraft this turn. So he gets completely pulled away from the attack if he doesn't instigate things with a maneuver or half-loop. If your last intervention attempt fails, you choose the target bomber and the attack on it continues normally. If a wingman's attacking a formation aircraft, he gets his additional cards at this point. Okay. Burst limits against formation. Medium and heavy bombers rely on defensive firepower rather than maneuvering to stymie attacks. So fighters and light bombers attacking them gain extra bursts. Except for turret fighters, you increase the fighter leader's burst rating by 2 when attacking an enemy formation aircraft, and a light bomber leaders by 1. Yeah, so your fighter gets a +2 bonus, a light bomber going into attack formation aircraft only gets a +1. You can further increase that burst rating by 1 for maneuvers, for each maneuver card, and 2 for each half loop that you played successfully, just like you were increasing your bursts against a wingman. This is an expensive process because you're eating through a lot of cards to get your bursts off, and then you still have to play the bursts. If using an optional, and your horsepower doesn't go up, so you still get like just a couple of cards back. If using the optional attack angle, you can increase burst rating by 1 for a rear attack, or decrease it by 1 for a frontal. Once the target bomber is determined, the wingman the wingman attacks separately during the wingman phase. Once the target bomber is determined, draw additional cards equal to the wingman's defense rating, modified for attack angle. Just like when attacking fighters, wingmen have no burst limit. You can continue to attack with as many attack cards as you have in your hand. Okay. How do you actually attack? Once the specified bomber has been determined, the defending player draws a mini hand of cards equal to the target bomber's turret defense rating, plus the combined turret support ratings of all other bombers in the formation. Now that is at most 2 more bombers. If using the optional attack angle, you get +2 if being attacked from the rear, or -1 if attacked from the front. Attack the targeted bomber by playing a single. So now, Either the wingman or the leader attacks the targeted bomber by playing a single attack card, just as they would in a dogfight. Only red cards can be played to initiate attack. Those are the... well, maybe not. Maneuver and half-loop cards successfully played by an attacking leader increase the burst rating. They have no effect if they're played by a wingman, as the wingman will have no burst. It looks like you have another opportunity to play the maneuver and half-loops to increase your rating. Once you get past the escort side of things. You probably would want to be able to pick your target, though, which is the other advantage. So, but the thing is, so here's the thing. If I play this and you intervene, I get to attack a bomber no matter what. If I hold off and don't play that, and you don't intervene, you pick which bomber I attack, and then I'm able to keep playing these. I don't know how the interaction is. Like, I'm trying to figure out, would it be worth it to hold them? I don't think so, but in my sights and out of the sun cards are played as hits on the targeted bomber unless they get negated by a spoiled attack response. The target aircraft then can respond to each of these cards by playing one card from the mini hand that they drew from the turrets. Any in my sights or out of the sun card can be played, or any card with the spoiled attack symbol. That's not this one, it's the gray one. It's this one. Or an in my sights or out of the sun card that has a spoiled attack symbol. Actually, you can play either one, whichever ones are valid. Okay. If the response is an in my sights or out of the sun card without a spoiled attack, and we have an asterisk here, option, if the turret defense is 1 star and out of the sun card does not apply, your guns aren't heavy enough to be able to use that. If it doesn't have a spoiled attack, the attack on the bomber succeeds and it incurs hits as indicated by the attacker's card. The attacker can then respond to the bomber's card and negate it. But if he does so, he has to randomly discard one remaining card from his hand or mini hand. The bomber can never respond to an attacker's response. If the attacker does not respond to the bomber's card, the attacker suffers whatever hits were on the card. So you'll lose what might be, attack cards that you're holding back against the bomber. Once again, trying to make him waste his good spoiled attack or something like that. Okay. Bombers marked 1 star have only a few rifle caliber machine guns, usually manually operated. If the response is a valid spoiled attack card, the attack is negated and the bomber incurs no hits. The attacker cannot respond to a spoiled attack. It defeats the shot completely. If the response is an in my sights or out of the sun with a valid spoiled attack, the attack on the bomber is negated. The attacker can still respond to the bomber's card to avoid taking hits, which will require a discard, remember, but cannot cancel the spoiled attack. If the attacker does not respond to the bomber, the attacker suffers the hits indicated on the card unless using the optional rule per A above. What? Wow. The optional rule per A. That's the turret defense 1. Oh, so you can still play the out of the sun to spoil attack even if you couldn't hit with it. That's what it's saying. Okay. There's no response. If there's no response by the targeted bomber, it incurs whatever hits are listed on the attacker's card. And then the attacker can play another one if he still has bursts available or if he's a wingman. And that's this. If he has red cards, he can initiate new attacks on the same bomber. He can increase his burst rating. I guess, because maneuver and half loops are included in here. Spoiled attacks, there's 2 kinds of spoiled attacks. Standard ones are valid whenever you're attacked by flak or an enemy aircraft. Special ones are valid only when a bomber is attacked by an enemy aircraft while in formation but you're receiving 0 turret support. Okay. So if you're in formation but receiving turret support, no turret support, you're able to get these special cancels, which is basically some protection from the formation. But then here is something weird. Including if it is alone. If you're in formation, how are you alone? I don't know. Let's keep looking. There's a note here. Many medium bombers lack sufficient defense to merit a turret support rating of 1. The special spoiled attacks afford these aircraft some benefit for remaining in formation. Great. Here's my problem. I still don't get that, including if it's alone. And this is the thing that I looked up in the errata, and there was no mention of this. It just doesn't make sense. How are you in formation if you're alone? I really don't fucking know what that's meant. Like, are you in formation if you're alone? I just want to drop that. Like, it just doesn't fucking work, right? Like, the whole purpose of this is that you're getting support from the other planes that's preventing the fire from hitting you. And I don't know what it even means to be in formation and be alone. Like, that's not something that makes any sense to me. All right, we're going to break again here at the where we hit the bombing rules for the game. I probably am going to go to sleep. This is getting things fucked up because here I am working through these rules. Unfortunately, I had to play a fair amount of Raid. And the next thing I'm going to want to do is probably go up and play more of the Central Front series. And now I've got like elements of that, followed by the rules, followed by more of that. It's going to be a bitch to put this thing together, to parse what's inside the camera. But I think it's the only way I can do things because I've got to get some sleep at some point. Nicer day than expected from the forecast. Unfortunately, I feel like I have to get this done because I can't play my game upstairs, and this daylight would be very nice to do so in. I guess I could go shopping. I don't really need food terribly. I don't need to go to big shopping, but I could run down to the local, to the market of no choice. There's a couple of things I'd like to get there. Treats more than anything else, but instead. Let's hit the bombing rules, which are going to take us really to about here. So we've got like 7 or 8 pages of rules. After that, we hit campaigns, some of which we need to read, which will get us, we're getting out to, like page 24 or so. But then we hit special rules for the campaigns. And after that, it's all the specific campaigns, which I think it's best to introduce and to read, for that matter, as I start a given campaign. And I don't know how many of these I'm going to play, but I'm going to give at least one of them a shot. All right. Striking mission targets. General bombing. Why don't I turn some heat on? Wouldn't that be nice? It's fucking cold down here. I mean, it's not too bad. It's probably around 50, 55, somewhere in that range. It kind of doesn't change, which my wife used to have to turn the heat on in the summer at night. And I used to kind of complain and tell her, just leave the damn door open. There's a screen door. Anyway, for determining bombing results, right. Okay, aircraft strike their mission targets with their ordnance and or by strafing during over-target turn. Fighters and light bombers strike during the airstrike phase over here, within the normal sequence, basically, whereas formation aircraft wait to strike during the final step. And that was something that I had missed when I first read it. It looked confusing to me, and we cleared that up earlier. To determine bombing results for each aircraft, In the unit or formation, you draw a number of action cards equal to the aircraft's bomb rating, modified by the bombing mode and the altitude as shown on the strike chart. There's the strike chart, which gives a great deal of information, the altitudes, the type of bombing being done, and then if you've got a dash, I guess you can't do it. If an asterisk shows up, you're out of the sun cards, don't create hits. You know, and this is a table that you're going to have to zone out on. To some extent, you can look, you know, to some extent, certain planes just will do certain things, you know. So, for example, if I'm torpedo bombing, I have to go down to very low. I also can only shoot ships, but dive bombing, I have a couple of different options. You know, for most of these type of bombings, I have choices of what I can do. And with saturation bombing, I can be way up there, above the height of most interceptors, get away with the bombing mission, get my credit for it. Sure, I won't do as well, but I'll still kind of win, right? Okay. Which is something, so like selection of fighter, of what's going into a given mission, that's kind of weird, because if I launch a bomber strike at very high altitude and the opponent secretly, and I secretly pick, you know, what bombers I send, and the opponent secretly picks fighters that can't reach that altitude, I can just avoid those fighters completely. That feels a little wrong. It feels like there's a mission coming in, scramble the fighters that can reach it. You know, it shouldn't all be a hidden, a totally hidden choices type thing, right? You notice what altitude they're at and you're like, yeah, we better send something that can meet that altitude. I don't think that there's anything that I haven't looked at the campaigns, but I don't think that there's anything that allows you to make that kind of judgment in mid decision. I think everything's this pre-plotted decisions, what you're sending against a given mission. And it feels a little fucked up to me, to be honest. Okay, where are we? If the defending player draws, the defending player then draws a number of action cards equal to the target's flak rating shown on the applicable mission card. So we got the flak here of different types. Again, modified by the bombing mode and the bomber's altitude. And that'll be, let's see, flak cards is the separate column here. It's kind of interesting. If you're level bombing or strafing, you can't do it at medium height, but you still suffer flak. I mean, it makes sense. It's just, are you really level bombing or strafing at that point? You might not be able to leave the area, and maybe you stay, you know, you have to fly over the target. Okay. Potentially inflict hits on the strike aircraft, and for each spoiled attack result on a flak card, immediately discard the best bomb result drawn by that aircraft in the previous step. Even if the striking aircraft was damaged or destroyed by target flak, any damage to the target for remaining bombs, ones that were not canceled, take place. So it's possible that that attack cards, like in my sights or whatever, end up doing damage to excuse me, to a target, without canceling the attacks so that the bombs hit anyway. So a card like this doesn't have a cancel attack, but it does have hits on the target. Okay. Different bombing modes. Level bombing, most fighters and some bombers. Dive bombing, a few fighters and light bombers. Saturation bombing, most medium and heavy bombers, and torpedo bombing, some light and medium bombers. You're going to be rated for those by looking here. So for example, this has two options, bombs and rockets, as just an indication. There's a possibility that you have splits. And it also specifies 0 level bombers. Let's see if we got anything particularly interesting. I don't know, some of them I think have split types of bombing listed on them. And actual bombers don't seem like they have their bombing in a different location. So we get used to different cards for some aircraft, usually torpedo bombers, are capable of more than one strike mode. Each unit of formation can only perform one mode per mission. Aircraft with cannot or no number in the bombing section of their cards may not drop bombs or torpedoes. I think you make the choice to dive bomb. To dive bomb mid-mission. Torpedo bombs, you have to have torpedo bombs on board. But with the dive bombing, you have the option to try to level bomb with the same bombs, or you can use the dive for greater precision. The bombing mode determines the attackers from which an aircraft, the altitudes from which an aircraft may strike, as well as the manner in which it delivers its ordnance. It can also modify the number of flak cards drawn in, all from the strike card. In addition to bombing or torpedo strikes, all fighters and light bombers with a burst rating and any aircraft with a strafe rating may make a strafing run. And those can be combined. Level bombing, this is used by fighters at low or very low altitude, though some bombers also use this. Draw a number of cards equal to the aircraft's bomb rating. At very low altitude, you get an extra, and an extra flak card comes at you. Dive bombing. This is by designated light bombers. Dive bombing aircraft, and it's got this diagonal. Dive bombing aircraft must begin the over-target turn at medium or low altitude. During the altitude step, they must dive to the next lower altitude. The leader does not get an action card for diving during the dive bomb. If the bombing leader is disadvantaged or tailed, the engaged enemy leader may not follow unless agile, and must give up his position and remain at the starting altitude. The reason for this is that the dive bombers have special dive brakes, which basically the interceptor following them would end up passing them unless they're very, very capable. You know, they give the agile capability. Draw a number of cards equal to the aircraft's bomb rating, plus at low altitude 1 additional bomb card, at very low 2 additional bomb cards, as well as an additional flak card. Saturation bombing. This mode is used by medium and heavy fighters, bombers with specially trained bombardiers, salvoing large bomb loads simultaneously. Draw a number of cards equal to the aircraft's bomb rating, modified by altitude. See the strike chart for these modifications, as well as for the modifications to the target flak draw. Yeah, there's too many of them on the saturation bombing. You know, this was like, yeah, you add something if you're at very low. Great, great. Okay. Naval targets. Moving ships are harder to hit by saturation bombing than land targets. Yeah, no doubt. Decrease the result on each bomb card by 1 level. Skip bombing. Some campaigns allow Allied bombers to employ skip bombing against naval targets. When doing so, these bombers may make level bombing instead of saturation bombing strikes at very low altitude, avoiding the normal penalty. There aren't any in this game. I'm guessing 0 has them. I don't have that down here. We may give that a shot too at some point. Probably not in this same sequence. But we may use these rules to do it, just because there's advantages, although there's disadvantages with the quality of the cards. I don't know, maybe 0 has bad cards too. Do I have one of the Dan Versen ones? Dan Versen took like this game system to his own company, I think, as well. Like, I don't know what happened. I think he had some that he did of his own, but they may be not World War II. They may be World War I games. I don't have them if they are. I didn't want to play World War I with this card play type thing, but World War II I don't care about that much, so I'm willing to deal with the abstractions, and it's absolutely fun for me. Okay, torpedo bombing. This is used only against naval targets by designated light and medium bombers at very low altitude. They must begin over target at very low altitude. This is one thing when you're playing this thing, you got to know what your requirements are for getting the bombing out. I'm going to have trouble with that, I can almost guarantee you. Medium bombers must fly the entire mission at very low altitude. Wow. Light bombers must end the last target-bound turn at very low altitude and must remain at that altitude throughout the over-target turn. They're free to climb during their homebound turn. Draw one card for each torpedo carried. A miss is still a miss, but all other results score twice the number of damage points. Strafing. During the over-target turn, any aircraft with a burst or strafe rating at very low altitude may strafe an eligible mission target instead of or in addition to conducting a bombing strike. Leaders and wingmen may strafe independently. One need not do so if the other does. Just looking. I want to make sure. It looks like every type of bombing can actually be done at very low altitude, although saturation bombing has a penalty. Oh no, actually it has an advantage, right? On the target, it gets +1. It gets the, yeah, this is the same as normal. The out of the sun hits don't count on target. It's just weird. And the out of the suns are likely to do a little bit more than the in my sights, so that's kind of interesting. But that's because they're the heavy guns. They're too slow to react to very low planes. And they cover that in the game, like in the rule book. Let me swap batteries because as I go deeper into strafing, because I'm running low. I'm kind of peeking at the resource card and I see, wow, there's a lot of weird shit here. So for example, altitude adjustment is a resource. You can change the mission altitude of the bombers at the start of the mission. This is going to be weird shit that comes from the campaign itself, and we're going to have to cope with it as it happens because the resource card isn't really covered within the rulebook. Okay. Target restrictions. Only targets annotated on their mission card with a miss and hit damage points in a red background are subject to strafing. So we look here, like the marshalling yard doesn't have strafing, the rail yard does. Available. Most military and naval targets may be strafed, most industrial and morale targets cannot, but there are a few exceptions. If the strafing aircraft also bombs, strafing occurs after bombing and target flak are resolved, with the exception of attack bombers. In this case, the strafing aircraft will undergo an additional target flak. I don't know what attack bombers are. 2.173. Ah, they're medium bombers with a strafe rating. Okay. Draw action cards equal to the aircraft's burst or strafe rating, plus a number if equipped with heavy cannons, whichever is higher, with a minimum of 1, even if the rating is 0. Since wingmen never have a burst rating, so I guess 1 and 0 are the same, they use their leader's rating instead, still with a minimum of 1 draw. The strafe results section of each card indicates the level of damage, either hit or miss. There's no direct or vital, and this is the strafe section, I guess, because that's kind of here. I was wondering what that hit or miss was, because you know, with flak and everything else, they do what the card says, but this is what it is. So yeah. Okay. Wow, I wonder if you ever get points for missing with a strafe. That would Feel kind of weird. The defending player draws action cards or for target flak as usual. Well, yes and no. Remember what it said up here. Strafing comes after bombing and target flak are resolved for most planes except for the attack bombers. But if you didn't bomb and you're just strafing, then you take flak afterwards. Just as when bombing, for each spoiled attack result on a flak card, immediately discard the best strafe result shown in step. So to me, it looks like this is fucked up because strafing occurs after bombing and target flak are resolved, with the exception of attack bombers. In this case, strafing aircraft will undergo additional target flak. Like, without the ability to prevent the flak, I'm bothered. Like, it feels like I get to strafe for free the way this is worded if I'm playing a fighter. I may have to look at the examples. A Junkers 87B dropped their bombs. They're eligible to strafe. They face additional battleships flak. Yeah, so, but that's the Junkers 87. I think that's one of these attack bombers. Let me look. Yeah, it's a light bomber. Oh, this says medium bombers. Okay, I'm really confused. So, I'm also pissed off that I have some of these facing one way, some of them the other. So this is a light bomber with a strafe rating and a burst value. Well, no guns on it though, so yeah. Yeah, I'm just fucking confused because it appears in this, after surviving the flak, they're eligible to strafe since they dive bombed from very low. This is very You can't dive bomb from very low. Well, I guess they mean you were at very low when you released your bombs. This is very risky because to strafe they face the battleship's daunting flak of 5 cards again and can inflict 2 more damage points at best. But since you only need 1 more point to raise the target's damage to the next, you decide to press ahead. Yeah, so I feel like, let's take a look at this. If the strafing aircraft also bombs, strafing occurs after bombing and target flak are resolved, with the exception of attack bombers. Period. In this case, I guess any case, you're going to face it. Now, let's take a look at the attack bombers and see what it says. This allows them to conduct strafing as well as bombing. This rating must be used only to strafe, has no effect on ground to air. If they have a strafe rating of 1 or more, they have a special ability to conduct bombing and strafing runs simultaneously. Ah, yes! Okay, so here's the special thing. Those medium bombers are the ones that avoid the additional flak. Didn't read far enough to get to that. Okay. This is the problem with the way I read rules, right? I did warn you guys, at least with the original rule set over there for the dogfights, don't take me as the person you're going to learn the rules of how to play the game from, right? I'm giving you the full experience of what we do. In general, some games I can give a decent, but I know that I need this as much. But I feel like it's also useful as a context for understanding where we are in the playthroughs and why we're struggling and stuff like that. Okay. Even if the striking aircraft was damaged or destroyed by target flak, apply damage for each remaining hit result. They can be canceled no matter what. Surviving aircraft of a neutral unit or formation with a burst strafe rating of 1 or more may elect to strafe 1 more time, but must face target flak again to do so. This is interesting. It sounds like you can do a second strafing run and face flak again, but only if you're in a neutral I don't remember position, or I guess if you're in a formation. Sounds dangerous, but okay. All right, so attack bombers, we talked about that a little bit. Bombers with a strafe rating carrying air-to-ground rockets may bomb and strafe and fire their rockets while still facing only a single round of target flak. Only these medium bombers. In this case, however, the number of flak cards drawn is not reduced as per the normal bombing, the normal rocket fire standoff bonus. Mission cards. Every type of mission is represented by a mission card. That's these. In all missions, score victory points for enemy aircraft destroyed or damaged, just like in dogfights. The other air combat missions have special means of scoring victory points as explained on their mission cards. Other cards are for mission targets and include area and target flak ratings, damage points section showing the effects of each bomb card result, and a success level showing the damage points needed for each success level against the attack. Now, these are the bombing ones. Do they have other kind of... Here's the dogfight missions. Voluntary disengagement is the only place where there's an actual penalty for fighters disengaging, but there is a penalty which is not spelled out on here for bombers dropping load and giving up and stuff like that. Where are we? What am I reading? See, we're back to flak here. Okay, great. Okay, I got confused by that. Anyway, when you score a number of points against a location, you add that all up, and you see what success level you get, and that gives you a number of victory points. It's not a hell of a lot. It is more valuable to keep your planes alive in general. But if you're sent on a bombing mission, and you say, let's dump all our bombs early and turn around, you lose some points for that. Maybe not as many as you would lose for a really disastrous mission, but you might as well try to follow orders. Against mission targets, besides scoring victory points for enemy aircraft destroyed or damaged, you also score for each bomber that goes over target and completes the mission undamaged. The success level attained also produces an associate number of victory points for the striking side, as noticed on the mission card. Fortified targets, some are noted as fortified targets. When these targets are struck by bombing, you reduce results by 1 level. Each hit result does only 1 point for air-to-ground rockets instead of 2, and you will not be able to strafe them. And I don't know what will say it's a fortified target. It might be in the mission itself. Like something like ground forces, you might be hitting something armored. Cities are certainly not going to be fortified, so I don't know where that's going to be spelled out. I'm not seeing it on the mission cards. I think it'll be within the campaign. Yeah, on the campaign card. Okay. Airdrop missions. In an airdrop mission, strike aircraft drop supplies from very low altitude only when they would otherwise bomb during the over-target turn. Draw 1 action card for each cargo point carried. Skilled air crews with the bowel movement or shitting skills, I don't know what those are, bombing probably, or strafing, do not draw an extra card. Consult the strafe section and deliver 1 supply point for each hit result given. Apply target flak, including spoiled attacks normally. Unless the campaign says otherwise, it's assumed you're dropping supplies into an area that's contested enough that flak would apply. The final number of supply points delivered determines the success level of the mission. Air transport, like dogfight, Air transport missions last a number of game turns specified by the mission target matrix rather than 3 phases. Score 1 victory point for each cargo point carried by an aircraft that survives the entire mission. So there's just going to be a period where you're being intercepted. Mine laying mission. In a mine laying mission, striking, you're not having the target bound, homebound combination. In a mine laying mission, striking aircraft drop mines from very low altitude when they would otherwise bomb. No bomb cards are drawn and there is no target. Instead, you get victory points based on your bomb rating. And saturation bombers get less than level bombers. Recon mission. Instead of striking a target or other aircraft or carrying cargo or mines, aircraft on reconnaissance missions are trying to locate the enemy for future strikes. Aircraft listed on the target matrix, not any chosen as resources, are reconnaissance aircraft and are subject to special rules. Recon aircraft may change altitude. Okay, so when they say not chosen as resources, in the campaign you're going to have the opportunity to pick certain resources and distribute them among your missions. But the missions also have base planes involved in it. And what they're saying here is anything that's in the base planes for the recon mission is considered a recon plane. It might be a fighter, it might be a light bomber, or whatever. Probably not anything heavier. Anything that you add in the resources is considered a non-recon plane. It's not got the cameras and whatnot on it. Recon aircraft may change altitude normally during the mission, except they must end the final target bound turn at the altitude specified on the mission target matrix and remain there throughout the over target turn. Treat recon fighters as light bombers until the end of the over target turn. Remember, light bombers have some penalties in terms of how they're being what they can do maneuver-wise and whatnot, but they can also be protected by other fighters. During the final step of the over-target turn, draw 1 action card for each surviving mission aircraft, even if damaged. The best bomb result determines the mission's success level VP to score. So you pull 1 card per plane, basically, and you get the score. You get 1 score out of it. 1 guy got a good picture. I guess that kind of makes sense. Reconnaissance aircraft score victory points for surviving the mission without being damaged, similar to bombers going over target. See the campaign table for this. Certain missions are noted on the mission target matrix of the campaign cards as strafing missions. Instead of scoring victory points for success level achieved, score 1 victory point per strafe hit result gotten. Fighters commonly strafe bases and rail facilities. They couldn't significantly damage the facilities themselves. This gives them a chance to get victory points even if they can't reach the success levels needed if it were a bombing mission. My voice is beginning to give me trouble. And it's getting less pretty out, so I'm less inclined to do anything else. But yeah, we have... See, I don't know if I want to talk about land campaigns as their own thing. Land campaigns are a set of campaigns that follow a specific kind of rules, so I think it would be useful to do it here. Yeah, I'm just so worried I'm going to end up going through nearly everything, but I don't want to go into any specific campaigns. All right, I got to give my voice a rest. Well, in an hour or so, it's turned pretty damn drizzly and wet, so I didn't miss much. And also, I woke up so late that I really would have only probably gotten like an hour of play in upstairs. So I didn't throw too much away in any sense of the word. Anyway. Most mission targets have 2 flak anti-aircraft gunfire ratings, 1 for area flak and 1 for target flak. Area target. These flak ratings are the base number of action cards drawn against each aircraft when flak is resolved. Draw flak cards from the deck of the side defending the target. Now, this has changed since the original 8th Air Force, I'm pretty sure. I think you took area flak on the ingress and egress turn, and you took target flak, and you took area flak if you were in the area on the over target, or you took target flak if you actually went over target. Area flak attacks all aircraft that continue over target, i.e. that don't break off, both enemy and friendly, during the final steps of the target-bound turn 1. Okay, if we look at this, here's an operation for a particular thing. This is target-bound turn 1, before you get the over-target phase. The role of the aircraft, strike mode if it's a fighter, escort, or interceptor, determines which column to use on the strike chart. Really? Oh, we're down to target flak, aren't we? Draw number of target. Let's look again. The role of the aircraft determines which column to use on the strike chart. Attack the wingman of a unit first. Units in a cloud marker are immune to area flak. This is cool. So yeah, your height still determines, and like here at very low, we split between area and target flak. So yes, how low you are and what you're planning on doing will impact. Now, escort interceptors have their own column. Gotcha. If they're not planning on bombing or strafing. Well, bombing, I guess. Immediately apply hits from each in my sights or out of the sun card as it's drawn. No other cards have any effect. There's no responses to area flak. They're just boom, boom, boom. You know, you can't predict where they're going to hit. Target flak attacks all aircraft of both sides that continue over target during the over target turn, whether they strike the target or not. Fighters and light bombers are attacked during the airstrike step, the wingman first, while formation aircraft are attacked during the final step. Now, if I recall correctly, the airstrike step, if you're doing any kind of bombing or strafing, that's drawn before the flak is done. The flak is the response to it, among other things. Draw number of action cards equal to the target flak rating, modified by altitude bombing mode. Unless negated by a response, you immediately apply hits from each in my sights and out of the sun card. There's an asterisk. Out of the sun can't hit most things at very low. Although they do work against torpedo bombing because you're standing back. Negate the aircraft's best remaining bomb or strafe result for each card drawn with a spoiled attack card. No other cards have any effect. Now, and here's the heavy flak guns note. Formation aircraft cannot respond to target flak. Fighters and light bombers striking the target can elect to play a response card to negate the hits from one target flak card immediately after it's drawn. As each card is drawn, you have to make a decision, are you going to negate that? Kind of the same way as when you're playing in the dogfight scenario, somebody throws a one burst at you. Do you negate that or do you just take the hit because you know they might have something nastier in their hand? If you do so, reduce your best remaining bomb or strafe card by one level. So a direct hit becomes a hit. This is only one card per aircraft during the bombing or strafing run, not one card for each flak card, and you can't decide to respond to a flak card once another is drawn. So you got one thing that you can avoid, and you need to have a card to do so. Right? Yeah. You need to have the appropriate response card. Once an in my sights or out of the sun target flak card is drawn against a striking wingman, draw its normal defensive hand in which to respond. I believe it's under that same rule. It can only prevent one hit. So Basically, you're coming in for a bombing or a strafing run. You're not allowed to zigzag all over the place. Okay. Target flak and strafing. Attack every aircraft that strafes with target flak, even if it was already attacked by flak when it bombed, the exception being the attack bombers. Fighters and light bombers may respond again to target flak with just one response card. Does the wing get another hand of cards for this? That's a good question. This is hard to judge from this. That may be something I have to look up or make a decision on. I don't know which way I stand on that. Because he is kind of coming in for another pass with the strafing. So it feels like, yeah, maybe you would get another hand. Well, maybe here. Here we're getting the area flak. I don't think the example will go into this, but the wingman got destroyed in the initial. Yeah, so there's interesting considerations here. So during the Ju-87 turn, the element must descend to low altitude and drop its bombs. The German player draws 2 bomb cards for each aircraft. Before applying the bombing results, it takes target flak. His full throttle would normally respond to an IMS in my sights, but since the Stuka is still considered loaded during the aircraft strike step, he cannot play it and must take his 2 hits. That's an interesting facet, which is dropping your bombs, you're still loaded during that flak. That was something that was not clear at all. It looks like there may be stuff that's hidden in these examples. Since the leader's target flak included a spoiled attack, his vital bomb, the Axis player now faces a tough choice. He can evade with the tight turn, reducing the direct hit. Okay, once all elements have finished their turn, it's the over-target step in time for the Ju-88s to strike. I thought we just struck. I'm looking for a very particular case, which is particularly special, which is you come in with a fighter, you bomb, and then you strafe. Do you get another mini hand with the wingman? And I don't know. I don't know. I can go either way with it. All right. Campaign mission. So let's jump ahead and ignore that, and maybe we'll have to look it up if we're playing. Virtually all campaigns consist of a variable number of missions. 2 of the air combat missions, air transport and dogfight, last a set number of turns specified in the mission targets matrix of the campaign card, or until all aircraft are one side or destroyed or disengaged. Keeping track of game fights on the dogfight transport turn track. Now, the operations may have special tracks, or you might use the generalized campaign turn mission track. I'll probably use the generalized as a proxy for what's on the cards, so that I can keep the card without a counter moving around on it. But maybe I'm guessing this gray area here is actually of some importance. So I don't know. We'll see. All other missions are divided into 3 mission phases: the target-bound phase, the over-target phase, which is always 1, and the homebound phase. The duration of the mission, you have little last turn markers here. Okay. Each target will have 2 numbers separated by a slash in the turns column. Oh wait, air transport and dogfight have a single number of turns, yeah. All other missions, they have 2 numbers separated by a slash in the turns column. The first number is the base number of target-bound turns, and the second number is the base number of homebound turns. Let's see if we can find an example of this somewhere. I don't know where the fuck the missions are. Here's turns. The duration of all of them is determined by the target and speed of the strike aircraft. The over-target phase lasts 1. Okay. Yeah. The first number, yeah. Determine the actual number of turns at the start of the mission. Subtract the speed of the slowest strike aircraft from the base number. All fighters and light bombers have a speed of 6 for this determination, unless they're marked as slow, and then they'll have the speed listed there. Strike aircraft, though, not your escorts and whatnot. Apply any modifiers from resources the players have selected. And we saw there was like resources like, I don't remember what it was. I thought I had one. It was on the other side. I don't know. I think there are some that just like, say, you're in, you have less turns that you have to fly in or whatever. If the number of turns is reduced to 0 or less, skip that phase entirely. Otherwise, place the first turn target-bound and last homebound markers in the spaces corresponding to the resulting numbers on the campaign marker. And you'll see these move down to 1 and then back up to the maximum. If any strike aircraft are damaged when they complete the last homebound turn, there will be 1 straggler turn added, even if that phase would otherwise be skipped. A chance for the for any interceptors to finish them off. Conversely, if all mission aircraft are shot down, the number of homebound turns turns to 0. Now, I think resources count as mission aircraft under this. They're not like strike aircraft or anything like that. After choosing the resources, determine if any skilled in or green air crews are present. Remember, that's a randomization factor. Sometimes the mission target matrix allows the striking side to choose the altitude of the mission aircraft. Except in a dogfight mission, the strike player must select and reveal this altitude before players select the altitudes for their remaining aircraft. Makes sense that the interceptor knows what altitude you're at. Also makes, before they actually engage you, but it also makes sense that they know what altitude you're at least at the beginning, before they make any choices of what to scramble to respond with. And that's kind of one of the issues, and some of it may depend upon, state of radar and all kind of information like that, and the game just doesn't go into that. It instead goes into sort of a secret plot. What do you want to send there? You sent a bunch of fighters that can only go up to high? Too bad. All right, I need to wipe my glasses. A weird pause. I mean, I lit my pipe too, and I just don't know if I've ever used that as an excuse before. But there was something bothering me. Okay. Skip the target-bound phase except the final step of TB1 if there are no defending aircraft. Otherwise, play the number of target-bound turns determined. Even if any bombers are damaged before the end of the phase, this number won't change. Note that the target-bound turns count down. The target-bound turn number is equal to how close you are to the target, really. If all defending aircraft are destroyed or disengaged before the end of a phase, play the remaining target-bound turns normally, except skip all discard steps. So, let's say you're intercepted, and this gets more complicated because defending aircraft come in at different times under optional rules, and I don't know how well this works. But the idea is, I'm not allowed to, if I've got a lot of turns available or a couple of turns available, I'm not allowed to discard cards in order to improve my bombing hand. Because the fact that, at least for the, and I find this kind of, I don't know how I feel about this. If you have turns where you're not doing anything, you're allowed to modify your hand basically through the discard and draw phases to make it what you want it to be. And they don't want to let you do that during the campaign. But like if you're up at an altitude that no one else can reach, well, that's hard to get draws for. But sometimes you're disengaged and nobody's really dealing with you, and you can fuck around with your hand and build up the kind of strike hand that you want to have without actually using much of it. Okay. And they don't want you being able to tailor your hand. Breaking off. Okay. Except in air combat missions or as allowed by a resource, all fighters and light bombers not intending to bomb or strafe must break off during the final step of the target-bound turn. Does that include escorts? They're not intending to bomb or strafe. Place an over-target marker on each fighter unit that does not break off. All remaining bombers that have not disengaged must continue over target. Any fighters that join the mission during the over target phase are considered to have broken off. Fighters that break off will rejoin the over target aircraft at the start of the homebound phase. During the over target phase, they may attack only enemy units that have also broken off. If no enemy aircraft did so, they perform only the altitude, discard, and draw steps of their turn, skipping the rest. I think you're not allowed to continue the interception element part while you're over target. I think the decision is you don't want to risk flak. This is a little weird because there are rules that say the fire hits both players' planes. Striking fighter, let's see if it changes. Striking fighters that are over target may bomb, if loaded, strafe and attack enemy fighters that are also over target. Well, now, there shouldn't be any, again, by the way this is strictly worded. And it's leading me to say, look, the fucking interceptors should be allowed to fight, continue their dogfight as you go over the target and try to disrupt the bombing, and that seems incredibly important. However, this wording, all fighters and light bombers not intending to bomb or strafe must break off during the final step, is very disturbing. I don't think that's intended. Might be in the errata. I don't feel like going up and turning on, and looking for it on the computer. Maybe I'll mark things up because this paper is not too bad. I can pencil in on it, I think. It's not glossy. Okay. Only defending aircraft interceptors that continue over target may attack enemy bombers. Okay, look. It looks obvious to me that this statement is just wrong. It's only all mission fighters and light bombers not intending to bomb and strafe must break off. This is interesting, though, because you're not allowed to escort. You're allowed to intercept, you're not allowed to escort. Okay. They will suffer flak attacks, friendly fire, just like the strike aircraft. During this turn, loaded fighters, this is the over target, and light bombers on the correct altitude for their bombing modes strike the mission target with their ordnance during the airstrike step. Those at very low altitude may strafe. In either case, they must give up their position at the beginning of the wingman step if they're advantaged or tailing. Cannot play cards during their wingman and leader steps, and may play only one card from their hand or mini hand in response to any enemy attack cards, i.e. they may not respond to a response. It's going to be hard for me to remember. Whether they strike the mission target or not, all leaders, wingmen, and section aircraft of both sides over target must suffer target flak attacks during the airstrike step. Now, whether they strike the mission target or not, but you're not allowed to be here if you're not intending to bomb or strafe. It feels like there's another conflict here, although given that we've already determined that the escorts are allowed to be hit and they're not going to be striking, they're going to get hit. But I'm trying to figure out how do you lose how do you lose your capability to strike in between? I guess if you're damaged and you lose your bombs, I guess that could happen. Okay, formation aircraft strike the mission target and suffer target flak attacks during the final step. After all player turns are complete, all aircraft over target then also suffer area flak attacks during this step. This is really an interesting wording. So everybody is over target or broken off. The ones that are over target take target flak attacks, and then they take an additional area flak on top of the target flak. But the planes that broke off are not going to take area flak at this point. They're further away. So over here they take area flak. Here we chose to break off, we don't take it, and I think we take it again here. I don't know where we were. Like, we're really far away. I think the thing is that the concentration of the fire is so much over the target that those planes that broke off are no longer anywhere near a formation that's taking area flak. That's my words for it, man. Did we hit area flak already? It's like all planes, right? Final step of turn-bound one, and then the... okay, no, you don't take it here. So you take it here as you're approaching, you take it here, and it's at the end of the turns, and it's all aircraft. Okay. That didn't break off. If you break off here, you don't take it. Okay. Gotcha. In airdrop, mine laying, and reconnaissance, the strike aircraft do not actually attack mission targets during this turn. They determine success or failure by other means instead, as described in the special rules for their missions. Great. After area flak is resolved, fighters that broke off now rejoin the rest of the aircraft. Opposing units that are engaged retain their relative positions, whether they're, broken off or part of the other. All other rejoining units are neutral. And remove the over target markers. The homebound phase. Skip the homebound phase if there are no defending aircraft or if all the mission aircraft have disengaged or been shot down. Otherwise, play the calculated number of homebound turns. At the conclusion of the last one, remove all undamaged mission aircraft. They return to base safely. And play one additional straggler turn if any damaged strike aircraft remain. The mission is then complete. If all the slowest mission aircraft have been disengaged, this is an option, or shot down, you can recalculate the homebound turns based on the new speed. And yeah, we'll play with that if I remember. If any strike aircraft are damaged at the end of the last homebound turn, even if the phase would otherwise be skipped, they must remain in play for one additional straggler game turn. Any undamaged escorts or interceptors may choose to remain with them. So this is an interesting thing. They say somewhere here, if all remove all undamaged mission aircraft. This is where I'm getting kind of iffy about, like, what do they mean by mission, right? I don't know. Certainly, all the undamaged bombers are mission aircraft. But escorts, I don't know. We'll see. Escorts aren't part of the mission, apparently. But this is why I say, like, there's strike and mission, and then there's this amorphous out there doing stuff, which seem to be different. I don't think that there's a clear, like, delineation of definitions. Sometimes I miss these things, especially if they're somewhere like this, way over here. But yeah, I don't remember any definition of what a mission aircraft is versus what a strike aircraft is. There's no glossary that I'm aware of. Now, there is an index, so maybe that'll help us. Let's take a look. Missions. Okay, we don't have mission aircraft, right? And strike. Yeah, and I don't remember there being any definition of what these things are. So I think you're meant to just sort of absorb this and understand it. But again, the delineation of what a mission is, I kind of know what strike aircraft are. Strike aircraft are aircraft in the mission intending to strike. They have bombs. Now, given that escorts can strafe, I don't know. That's kind of a strike. But, I'm thinking something that's trying to accomplish the mission directly is a strike aircraft. But what is a mission aircraft? And is that delineated from resources and whatnot? Yeah, this is not all well defined. I don't know if it has to be, but it feels very fuzzy to me. And these are terms that are, they're not things that I can draw upon, my knowledge of games or reality to really get a lot out of. Okay. Night missions. Flying at night imposes several changes to the normal rules and ratings. During a night mission, do not use wingmen. Okay, this is interesting. Before it said night fighters don't use wingmen, they just don't have them. But apparently you just don't use them. It makes sense. You wouldn't want to be that close. Include a search step at the beginning of each player turn. Again, yeah, never mind. Fighters without night combat rating, day fighters, have an intrinsic night combat rating of 1 while undamaged, 0 while damaged. Succeed during search on white results rather than blue. What? Have their performance ratings rounded up and must disengage at the end of the mission. Well, duh. I think that means they have to make a chance to get home. All formation aircraft are out of formation. Now, this is just fighters without night combat. Bombers are fine. Reduce all area and target flak values by 1. Cool. Dive bombing is not allowed. All dive bombers use level bombing instead. Yeah, I can see where that could be an issue. Reduce direct and vital bomb results by 1 level. Vitals become directs, directs become hits, hits remain hits. When determining player order, night fighters will take their turns before all other fighters and light bombers. This could mean that one player gets multiple turns at the beginning of each multiple, I don't know what to even call them. Night fighters take their turns. What is this? Yeah, I guess night fighters get multiple turns within each turn. not multiple individually, but like, so if I have 2 night fighters and you have a bunch of, and you have 2 fighters, I would go first, second, you would go third, fourth, if it's a night situation. Whatever. All right. We had decided we have to talk a little bit at least about land campaigns because there are a few of them. We haven't talked about operation cards yet. Then there's different kinds of campaigns. Progressive campaigns. and then the solitaire campaign. Let's try to get what we can out of these. Let's look at the land campaigns, but I've got a break. Yeah, fuck me. Yeah, I got to swap batteries, but I've got a break relatively soon. I'm really kind of worried. Oh, this did not charge fully. What the fuck's up with that? I am relatively worried about. Oh, this was an older one. This wasn't the one I just did. About how I'm going to fit this in with the play of the game upstairs. I do have another camera, stupid yellow one, but it only has one battery. I feel like what I'm playing here is going to require at least a lot of intensity, and I know what I'm playing upstairs sometimes does. I also don't want to use the yellow camera for that one. Just because I want to be able, to see what's going on where it's not ugly. But this is going to be a real pain if I'm playing at night down here over multiple days, and obviously up there I'm going to be playing multiple days. Life is just too complicated for me. Okay, whatevers. Campaign cards. Each campaign card has information, the name of the campaign, a brief historical summary, a map of the campaign area, campaign sequence of play. There's one. There wasn't one on the other. List of all resources for both sides. That appears to be over here, not on the campaign cards. At least for this one. But this one has the resources here. Whatever. Yeah, it's got fighters present. Yeah, this is, I don't know, this is a specific raid. I don't know if this is a campaign. Oh, it's an old one though. It's been reworked. The mission table. There's a matrix for different missions. Do you draw a card to get that? There's the mission table. Yeah, you draw a card to get the mission table. I don't know the target mission matrix. You may be doing them numerically or something. I don't know. We got one on London. Campaign performance victory chart. Yep. In a generic land campaign log, players keep track of the missions conducted. Okay, I'm going to need to turn the camera off. Land campaign. You write down what your target is, what resources you sent, and how many victory points you get for each mission in the campaign. Each player will need his own log. Again, these are printed on stock, which makes me really iffy about them. Like, I really think that I can probably use a China marker on them. I don't know where my China marker is, though. Pretty sure it's down here. But anyway, I only have one left, I think. Or one here. I have a bunch of them at what is now my dad's barn, where he lives, associated with SFB and whatnot. I never brought that shit up here for some reason. There's a lot of stuff. Like, it would basically be a couple of boxes worth of shit that's very heavy and really a fucking royal pain to mail. So when I mailed all my games, I avoided putting something that massive in when I had no real expectation of being able to play it, of wanting to play it as a campaign, and also I thought I'd go back there, I mean, this was 15, 16 years ago, the last time I went down. A little after I started doing the videos. Whatever that means. Is that 15 years ago? Yeah, it's getting there. Okay. Most land campaigns all use an identical sequence of play. They may have special rules, though. Select the campaign and stage of the campaign you wish to play. Choose who will be which player. Play the campaign missions. For each, you draw an action card to determine the mission target and aircraft. Then you secretly select and reveal one resource. Then you determine the mission duration. Select additional air crews. I think that's the random picks. You might be getting some either off the mission or off the resource. Conduct the mission, calculate the victory points, reiterate for each mission, and then finally determine who won the sequence of missions. It's pretty cool. All right. Number of stages, number of missions flown is based on you know, there are different submissions. There are different types of campaigns. Like each campaign card might have different options as to when you are in that campaign that change some of the parameters of the campaign. And that's basically how long it is, which side people play. Many missions require only one player to participate on each side in such rare issues. So this is kind of weird. Whoa, there goes something interesting. I don't know if it was a fire truck or just a cherry picker. But the assumption is that each player is playing an element in this game. That's kind of troublesome, honestly. So, like, if you're trying to play the mission game, look, if you've got 2 or 4 people or whatever, that's easy enough, and maybe you split up the planes that way. But again, the assumption is that each player plays one element, and so you'd need to have anywhere from like 2 people, because you really want somebody from each side to be in charge no matter what, you know, of the campaign, to maybe like 6 people, and you don't know how many you're going to need. You know, that makes these campaigns really, really difficult to play under normal circumstances. Maybe at a con or something where you can go run out and grab people. You know, maybe have a pool of people who you just ask, hey, are you available, whatever. Because the actual missions aren't going to take all that long. But it is really an inconvenient design in that way. Like, I highly doubt that most people have the pool of potential players just available to them when they're playing. I gotta swap batteries again. I pretty much wish I could just give up playing Raid, right? Some of it is, it's addictive and it draws you in and you have to keep doing it. But some of it also is, I need something like that. Something that, like, first of all, I can't just play games, play board games all the time. My focus doesn't work that way, and it's one of the things with computer games in general. But watching videos and whatever, which is what I do when I play Raid, they kind of draw you in a deeper sort of, in a sense where you can eat up more time, and I need to eat up a lot of my time. And when I'm playing board games or whatever, I generally, like, you know, maybe play for a half hour at most, and then I go away for a half hour or an hour. Now with Raid, it's go away for many hours. It's like a fucking job, but whatever. But I need something. I would need something to replace it. Something that allows me to sporadically take breaks and justify, yeah, I can just watch videos, but I like something that's, you know, makes me feel like I'm doing something at the same time. I should take up crocheting. Okay. So where are we? Mission determination. The player listed first on the performance chart draws an action card and cross-indexes it with the campaign stage on the mission table. The resulting is the number of turns to be used on the mission target matrix of the campaign turn. What the fuck? The resulting number is the target number to be used on the mission target matrix. What number? What number? Draw one action card and cross-index the card drawn with the campaign stage on the mission table card. Okay, let's say I draw this one. I get a scissors. Scissors and clouds. Day 6. That feels kind of fucking weird. And night missions 1 through 4, night missions 5 through 6. Okay. If it is a daytime mission, I'll be doing mission number 6 over here at Frankfurt. And I can look at this and see I'm hitting the marshalling yard. This is what I'm given, my altitude and the turns. If I'm doing a night mission, and I don't know what the 1 through 4, 5 through 6 is, that may have to do with how late in the campaign I am or something. Again, I'm just faking this. I'd do 11 or 16 Leipzig, a city. I'd hit it with this. What was the other one? 16. I'd be hitting Essen's industrial center with these planes and this. And then I have like references here. Add Lancaster 3 to everything. So I guess this is a 6-mission run. But I don't know how you determine what's day and night. Again, that might be a decision the players make at the beginning of the game. That might be whatever. You know, who knows? It's campaign-specific information, but I am kind of showing you what you do in terms of finding that. And you do get, by looking this up, how many turns it takes for you to get there, etc. Okay. And you see the planes that you need. If the mission is a dogfight or mission table matrix leaves opposing aircraft on both sides. As in other missions, these forces can be augmented by resources, starting altitude, the length of it, any target that you're going to hit. Sometimes you'll hit special missions. Those have special rules. We don't have to get any further now. All right, let's keep going. Resources are additional aircraft and/or special effects allotted to the mission. All resources are explained on the 11 by 17 inch campaign resources card. I thought that's this. But it doesn't. Here we are. Haha. 11 by 17. Okay. After the mission target is determined, each player secretly chooses one numbered resource from the list of those available for the selected stage. So somewhere it's going to tell me what resources I have available to me. I don't know where. But then I pick one of those options for a given mission to use here. And those might be additional planes. Each resource can only be used once per campaign. Once both sides have recorded the numbers of the resources chosen in their campaign logs, simultaneously reveal the choices and place any aircraft cards added thereby in front of them. I want to find where the resources are on a list from those available for the selected stage. That's what I want to see. I want to see at least one example of that and show it. It took me a while to find a card that had it. Barbarossa has resources listed here. I don't know. It's possible some of these, some of the resources are on These, yeah, resources are spelled out here as well. So I think between the log and the card, something should give you what resources you have to pick. And again, these can be planes, those can be events, they can be all kinds of stuff, and you're only allowed to pick each once. Which again doesn't feel like, you know, I mean, what I'm expecting here is something like the Richthofen's War or Wings campaign game, where it's like I'm tracking one or two flights of planes and what missions that they're getting. And I don't feel like that's this at all. This is just a scenario generation system that doesn't really cover any kind of campaign feel, for the most part. I find that really, really disappointing. Like, you know, I don't know. Maybe what I really like about Ambush so much is that I've got my own crew, you know, my own squad, and sure, half of them are going to die every time at least. No, usually all of them, because I suck at the game. But if anybody survives, they get better, you know, and that kind of thing. And I'm used to that with the air, with my World War I air games, and with Blue Max, tracking how many times you know, you've gotten kills and whatnot, and getting some kind of experience over the course of the game, making it more of a role-playing type experience as well as this war game. And I got to tell you, when I played SFB, I tracked my crews individually. You know, I tracked my ships individually as to what they had and everything, so that between scenarios, I'm dealing with them. It is really a campaign framework. Here, I don't feel like the campaign's a campaign. I feel like it's something that strings, that has a single victory point set. You know, that's where it's a campaign. But it doesn't really relate too much, from what I can see, as to, you know, how well you're doing and whether or not, you know, your pilots are improving and anything, and swapping them on different planes and stuff like that, and what the effects of that would be. None of that is in play here. Anyway, it just makes me sad. And I could come up with something, there's no question. Okay. And some campaigns, certain resources aren't available at certain times. That's fine. Mission victory points. You gain victory points for accomplishments. In general, damaging enemy aircraft is worth it. Enemy aircraft that voluntarily disengage in a dogfight only give points. And shooting down enemy aircraft crews that are skilled. You also get victory points for each enemy aircraft that, well, the defender gets them, that jettisons ordnance to prevent people from just trying to go for victory points by, like, not losing planes. Because the problem with bombing raids are your bombers are really vulnerable and they're worth a lot of points. And that's right, but the idea that, yeah, let's just not conduct a bombing raid because we got intercepted kind of spoils the game, the fun of the game. Mission success level. Bombers and fighters that flew over target and returned undamaged give points. As you play through a number of different missions, you're going to accumulate victory points across all the different missions, and the campaign victory goes to whoever accumulated the most. All right. Big, nasty optional rule. And if you want this thing to be at all realistic, you need this one. Fuel expenditure. Measure fuel expenditure of fighters only by tracking fuel points. Campaigns where these rules may be used, 8th Air Force Battle of Berlin, include a fighter fuel endurance chart on their campaign cards. I'm going to use these maybe in those scenarios, but I'm not going to, obviously I can't use them anywhere else. And it's important. I think we want to go over it because it affects maybe two, but this is this is a big burden, and you do not want to use it in, you know, where it's not applicable, obviously. But yeah. The chart lists the starting fuel points for each fighter type, including both internal fuel and drop tanks if they carry them. Use the campaign log to maintain the fuel point data for each plane. We've got a fuel status. See, this is weird because 8th Air Force and Battle of Berlin, I think, both have their own campaign logs, yet there's a fuel status log here. It may be that they say may be used. I mean, the game just doesn't work if you've got long missions and fighters don't have a fuel limitation. Okay. Use the campaign log to maintain the fuel point data for each fighter unit assigned to the mission. After determining the mission duration and selecting air crews, but before starting the target-bound phase, record the mission number, the type of fighter, and the target or homebound turn in which it'll join the mission. Fighters are not allowed to join the mission during the over-target phase. There a rule about joining the mission during the over-target phase. Record the number of fuel points carried at the start of the mission in the internal fuel and drop tank columns as appropriate. Once a unit joins the mission, record its turn order number to help keep track of which unit has how much fuel, i.e., what's on the board, you know? Which plane is that? What number is that? Okay, escorts are fighters protecting the bombers. Those that do not begin the mission on the first turn target bound or the last homebound turn must expend fuel points in order to join the aircraft flying the mission. If an escort has to join the mission before the over-target phase, it expends 1 fuel point for each turn the mission aircraft flew before joining the escort. That sounds kind of expensive, right? If an escort is to join the mission after the over-target phase, it expends 1 fuel point for each turn the mission aircraft must fly before the originally planned end of the mission. Once an escort joins the mission, the amount of fuel expended each turn is determined by the presence or absence of the enemy. If there's any enemy present, they spend 5 fuel points per turn. Now, 20 is a goodly amount of fuel points for these planes. Which is to say, you might have like 4 to 6 turns maximum that you can be in the air before you have to disengage due to fuel. If there's no enemy aircraft present during part of a turn, you only have to spend 2 per. And I believe the interceptors... Okay, interceptor fuel. Interceptors are fighters attacking the bombers and their escorts. Unlike escorts, interceptors never expend fuel to join the mission. Once they join, they spend 3 fuel points per turn. It's a little weird because you're doing the same kind of dogfighting. Why the escorts are spending so much more fuel? But there you have it. And we are really running low on batteries, and I want to get through this. And then we'll stop and see if tracking fuel expenditure, you just spend them, right? Fuel disengagement, if you're reduced to 0 or less fuel, you must simultaneously perform a fuel disengagement. This is going to be like a voluntary disengagement, except there's a penalty for your chances of making it home. And there's no additional there's no automatic victory point loss, though, if you fuel disengage, even from a dogfight. Although I don't think these will happen in dogfights. We're going to stop there. Here are special rules for all the different scenarios. But then we want to go to the operations, which is, I believe, these. No, that's these. Yeah, I want to say a few words about each of these things, but I'm not quite ready yet. We're getting to nighttime. It's time for me to play Raid. I'm going to want to take a break. I'm not going to be able to play Central Front Series during that time. So it's not a big deal that I'm pausing here. Yeah, it's fully night now. Not that late, but I think ever since, so yesterday they were supposed to be working on the internet and the cable situation and whatnot. basically disconnecting everything, including phones that are in this area and whatever, to upgrade to something. Whatever, okay. But ever since the night before, which would be Sunday night, my internet's been really sketchy. In the sense that, like, on, off every now and then. Today has been pretty good. Yesterday, there were a couple of moments where it was bad, but it was worse Sunday night. It was at about its worst. It's probably actually around 5:30 p.m. about this time last night. I think they're doing something where they try to switch over or something and it just fails. And then they say, okay, fuck it, and switch it back. But it's sort of like, I don't know, the worst of all is right now. So I'm going to take a few minutes to try to grab some of this. Operations. The operations cards, that's these guys, I guess. No, that's these guys. An operation is a set of missions that depict one or a few days of air combat. It's somewhere between a dogfight and a campaign. We'll probably start with an operation and see how far we get. But if we look at it like a campaign, it has a track that might have something of interest in it. Battle of Britain's a campaign now. Into Egypt's a campaign. Yeah, so some of them don't have... The reason this has a track is because it's not just victory points. This is a progressive, actually. Okay. Anyway, an operation is sort of like a mini-campaign. The operation counts as one mission for a campaign. It's possible that one of these operations will be embedded into a campaign. Now, I can't imagine Operation Barbarossa. It's got to be a fucking campaign. Yeah, campaign design. Okay, so I don't know where operations cards fit in. This says operation, but... Schweinfurt raids might be an operation. You'd think Operation Pedestal is an operation, but it says campaign on it. Oh, I must have had tea working when I came down. I'll be back. Well, I go upstairs and my video is running already. I don't know where the fuck operations cards are. There's Operation Pedestal Access Campaign Log, but Operation Pedestal we had found was a campaign. These are not operations. These are targets. Okay, Operation Pedestal is an operation. Maybe the only one, because it's the only one they mention. So I guess the idea of it is it just fits into a campaign and it'll be run as special as its own campaign. So we see it's got its own operation log. Well, some of them do. Operation Pedestal has its own. They say most operations do not require a log. I don't know what most operations are, okay? I can't tell. We'll see when we run into them. I'm not going to do a fucking operation on its own. That's almost certain. But they've got their own specific, so like here it says, all missions have 3 target-bound and 1 homebound turn. Is this under Pedestal? It appears to be. So I don't know, because it's the only... Schweinfurt Raids is also... rules for this campaign are summarized in the campaign card. Treat each of the 5 segments as separate missions in terms of setting up and disengaging fighters. I don't know. We'll see what the fuck it has. Progressive campaigns are ones like this that have a campaign start and a set of goals that you have to make. Now, these don't specify mission aircraft and some don't even have resources. Instead, players begin the campaign with a pool of available aircraft. This is sort of the best kind, right? The kind that feels the most like what I want. You have control of what the aircraft are going to do and where you get to use them. Still doesn't have the sort of campaign feel of pilots becoming more skilled, but whatever. Begin the campaign with a pool of available aircraft and choose which planes to participate. As these aircraft are lost, they're no longer available. There's no set number of missions. You have a progress marker, and it moves along the campaign track. The campaign ends when it reaches a specific point. Players don't win or lose based on cumulative victory points, but on where the progress marker is on the track when the campaign ends. Well, this one has a campaign start and this with an allied decisive, an Axis decisive victory. I don't know if it just keeps going. You know, how do you end it otherwise? It may say. But some of the others, and again, you know, some of the others. This is Schweinfurt. This is a regular. This is a regular targeting run, right? Some of these others have a campaign track where maybe you start somewhere else. Doesn't tell me where you start, but Soviet decisive is here, Axis decisive is here, and as one side wins or loses things, it can move the marker back and forth across here. Stalingrad airlift is clearer. It says campaign start on it, which is helpful. Don't know where I'd start it here. Probably tells me somewhere, but you know, I'm not going with that. And then we have, you know, whether or not Stalingrad is relieved or surrenders. In one case, it's an Axis decisive victory. In the other case, you probably have to determine victory points as to how well the varying sides have done. The expectation, of course, being that Stalingrad's a hopeless situation. That air power alone isn't going to change that much. They have their own campaign log that you keep track of a number of different elements: victory points scored, weather events, resources available and used, and aircraft available and lost during the campaign. You get to choose your aircraft from the rosters in your campaign log. Sounds reasonable. Availability is limited to the number of each type remaining, the number of each type that can be used in a given mission, day, or week, which I'm hoping fits the card set. It would really suck if, and I suspect this is actually the case, but it would really suck if there are campaigns for which you do not have enough cards to play the campaign. That feels really obnoxious to me. But whatever. We shall see. Because to me, the campaigns are kind of why I bought this, right? I like the dogfights. I like the dogfights a lot. But one of the reasons I got rid of the original Down in Flames was because I didn't have the campaign thing. I couldn't see plunking another $20 down for another game that couldn't really be played solitaire very well. And since the buddy that I was most likely to play this with was the one who wanted it, I'm like, cool. All right. Total number of aircraft that can be used in that mission, day or week, usually determined by weather. You have a roster of the planes available. Some of them will be reserves. I could show you, but I don't feel like flipping through. It's cold, I'm tired. Or reinforcements that as you lose planes, you get additional copies of it. You only have, like let's say you have only 4 ME-109s in play at any one time, but there might be 10 available for the length of the campaign as long as you lose them. You check weather through a chart and an action card, and then you're allowed to assign the aircraft as you like within this. Now here it says, when assigning aircraft of the same class to a mission, you must use elements, sections, or formations of the same type and maximum size whenever possible. Okay. They have their own progress trait, and then we go into special rules for each of these different campaigns: Battle of Britain, Kursk, Stalingrad, Airlift. Finally, we have the solitaire campaign. I'm not even going to talk about it. It has its own little... It's basically shooting down a single V1 missile. So that's it. So we've covered it all. Just to hit a little further, the designer's notes were kind of nice in terms of, look, it assumes you know the original games, which might not be the case for a lot of people, because Down in Flames and first of all, why would you have 8th Air Force and not Down in Flames, unless you were my buddy? But Down in Flames and 8th Air Force have been out of print for a fucking long time. I actually tried to get them back back in 2008 or whatever. This has been under development as sort of a, let's try to consolidate it and put it all in one big box and give somebody, you know, something really, really useful, because the two sold separately didn't make a lot of sense, to be honest. And so there's been, you know, a couple of generations of gamers, as far as I'm concerned. You know, okay, look, what is a generation of gamers? I don't know. I think every 5 to 10 years is probably a generation of gamers, as opposed to generations of humans. It's just a matter of, like, you know, at what point can you get into it and how long do you have? There's been a significant period of time where there was no real entry point into this. And now this thing is available. Now, there were other possibilities. Dan Verson, like I said, I think had his own versions of the game coming out, and then there were things, I keep looking around on my shelves because these shelves used to contain it, but things like Zero, the Pacific War version of this, which was a more complete, it was probably like a combination of Down in Flames and 8th Air Force, maybe a little smaller than the combination, but it was, you know, a larger box, more stuff in it. Not as big as this. This is like, this includes some C3I stuff and everything. Probably includes the fighter and bomber packs that I picked up, but I can always use more planes, right? But anyway, from that standpoint of the person who's approaching it after having played the other games, this is all very useful. Corsairs and Hellcats. Do I have that? I think that was an expansion for Zero. But anyway, this is talking about the changes to the system. It doesn't give much about the original system design, but I gotta tell you, the designers changed. Dan Verson left GMT producing his own, he has his own company, or had his own company producing games, and we have someone else took over this. Let's see who it is. Chris Janiak. I may have met him. His name's familiar. I don't know what else he's done. And then, honestly, so the designer's notes for this game are not from the original designer. And I would have liked to have seen if there were original designer's notes in Down in Flames, but I don't think there were. GMT was a young company back then. I mean, the game came out in the 90s, in the mid-90s. And it has not been reavailable. Like, you know, once it's sold out, it was gone. If there had been original designer's notes, or maybe something from C3I, that would have been useful to put in here to kind of explain what the intention behind the game was. But again, 8th Air Force changed that intention by adding the campaigns. So this is about the best you could have gotten on here. Anyway, do we know enough to play a campaign? Well, it's hard to tell. We're going to have to dig into a specific campaign, which is going to have its own specific rules. And not having run a campaign before, I've played in one, but I didn't set it up and everything. And it was one of the earliest campaigns, and these are different, and some of the rules have changed and everything. I'm a little fuzzy on the idea. There's no question about that. But I don't want to, you know, I don't want to play a campaign just to test it out and then come back and talk about it and not be able to play it on video. So, all said and done, we have finished what I would consider the intro sections for this, along with a couple of dogfights. I know. I don't know if I'll have time. I don't know when and how I'll have time, but we'll be able to try and get a campaign out there. And, you know, honestly, flying the campaign itself is like flying a dogfight. Flying a campaign mission is like flying a dogfight. It's not going to take a lot of time to do. The overall campaign is probably not all that many missions from what I recall. But we'll see. Some of the campaigns are going to be bigger and richer than others, I'm sure. For example, the Buzz Bomb Solitaire. That's not really a campaign. Anyway, let me see if I can find it. It has its own card, as if it's a campaign. But I believe it's just a one-shot fight. Okay, maybe it doesn't have its own card. There it is. Has its own card, but it's basically a single fight against a V1 bomb, and therefore, you know, it's going to be the same size as a mission, right? Anyway, but since it needed its own card, and you didn't want to put the rules elsewhere, and it is different, you know, it's like. You're using your cards to try to do shit and everything. It's just this weird little solitaire thing, using the same components, but it's a different game. You're not dogfighting or anything like that. All right, up it goes, I guess.